to The Last Cast, HBO's unofficial Last of Us recap podcast. This show, hosted each week by me, Jack, and Andrew,
Hello!
will take a deeper look into the mega TV series event, The Last of Us. We'll break down, assess, compare, contrast, and have just a little bit of fun as we go. So grab yourself a cup of Joel's favorite blend and let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it.
Yes.
I feel like coffee would have healed Joel in this episode. We probably wouldn't have needed all the
Maybe.
stitches if we were able to just put coffee grounds on it. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
The antioxidants would have helped.
The wonderful healing powers
Of coffee.
Of bean juice, yeah.
Brown bean juice, yes.
Yeah.
Put it in my wounds. Put it in my stomach. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's intense.
This I wanted to preface with something here, which is interesting.
Okay.
I think is interesting.
Okay.
In the lead up to this episode, I had weighed some options. Okay. I'll just come right out and say it. I have never played the section of the game that this episode was based on, of the same title, Left Behind.
Not a fan.
Not a fan of me not having
Not
played.
a true fan of The Last of Us.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll go with that. Reason being is the game came out in 2013. I believe Left Behind as a DLC came out in 2014, about a year later. Is that tracks, right?
Yeah, so game came out in June 2013. DLC was February of 2014.
Listeners who might not be familiar with the video games or just video games in general, DLC is essentially you could think of that maybe like the extended cut, right? Additional content that wasn't in the original game but was made after the fact that adds to the story in some meaningful way.
Yeah,
generally.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game was remastered and then eventually remade. And I still have not played Left Behind. However, it's like at any time I could have jumped in to play it within the past few weeks, knowing that this episode was eventually going to be arriving on our doorstep. However, I thought it would be pretty interesting to have seen this without the context of the game to rely on. And so I will be participating in this episode like an audience member. So
interesting.
There we go. I have no frame of reference for what happened in the game for that specific part. So there you go.
All right.
I just wanted to get that out there.
I'm glad you got that out there.
I will be playing it. I will be playing it because again, we have the other podcast where we will have to. There is a mandatory clause in my contract that says I actually have to play this game, or under penalty of the law. So.
Yes, under penalty of eviction from our household.
Death. Yes. It was just like a number of compounding circumstances that would happen to me. So. Yeah.
That's interesting though, because I remember like right before we started the episode, I was like, "You didn't play the DLC."
That's right.
And I like the 2 weeks leading up to this episode, I was like, you gotta do it. It's like only 3 hours at most, 3.5 if you're just dicking around. And it just didn't happen. And then I think you just kind of had that secret little plan in your head and didn't share with me until the night of, which is stressful. So thank you for that.
First of all, you're welcome. I'm going to meet you authentically where you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been noodling over that for a little bit. I was like, I wonder if this would be the only time realistically where I will be using the show as a reference for the game as opposed to the other way around. So I'm actually kind of like looking forward to that in a weird way.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. There you go.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
That was different. And that wasn't even the right impression, but I merged the two for some reason. Jeff Goldblum and Joel Goldblum. What a weird name.
Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller is just a regular dude from Philly. I know Jeff Miller. You know what I'm saying?
We all know Jeff Miller.
Joel Goldblum. There's somebody I'd like to get to know. That's different.
Interesting. But Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to our episode 7 review of Left Behind. Again, as always, no spoilers on this show, and I try my best. Okay, I try my best.
Look, you gotta try hard.
we had listen.
You're like, look.
Hold on, no.
Okay.
And I sent this video to Andrew. Wonderful listener and friend of ours, Doomsday Dave 3D. He makes incredible renders for the Last of Us community. Just like all around great dude. But he sent he was watching our episode of episode 6 and basically seeing me struggle in real time of I can't spoil. So I was just like in a place with a thing and a person.
Yeah.
And I was like, like I should have done
basically did like a reverse Mad Lib. You're like, instead of naming a place, you took the place and replaced it with the just general word about it.
Mm-hmm.
He was a man and they went to location adjectively or adverb.
Yeah. So, Dave, thank you for that laugh. I watched that an embarrassing amount of times because I just like your laugh at the end. It was great. Anyway, so I will continue to try my best. Thank you, everyone, for
keeping
dealing
her
with
honest. Keep on keeping on, Dave. You gotta come on.
Yeah. Drop schedule Wednesdays. At some point on Wednesdays, we're we're doing okay with that. Contact information. If you'd like to reach out to our show, and we've gotten so many emails the last couple weeks. I cannot wait till the end of the season. We could do 1 or 2 big bonus shows, so look for those in the future. Everybody who's contacted us, I see you. I have read your emails. I've loved them. Can't wait to talk about them. We're not ignoring you. Trust. But if you would like to add to that, you can do that by emailing at tloupodcast@gmail.com. Do it. Get in there before we do those big shows. And if you'd like to follow us on Instagram, TLOU Podcasts, or Twitter, TLOU Podcast, feel free to do that as well. We did get a couple more reviews over on iTunes. So, Andrew, would you like to share those with everyone?
It makes sense that I read these because it's my impassioned plea at the end of each episode.
It does.
When I'm broken after 3 hours of talking, when I'm literally at my lowest point, I plead, and the people have heard me. They've heard my cries, and now they've turned out. 3
They showed up.
3 we got. 3. All right, all 5 stars. I'm not going to reiterate that. Y'all are the best.
Yes,
Let's talk about Cara B or Cara. Cara. Write in. Let us know the pronunciation. I never know.
Yeah.
I'll just say both. Cara B. She writes. They write. Love both perspectives. HBO only watcher. So that's the title. HBO only watcher, not a game player. I absolutely love this podcast. It is an in-depth dive into the show. It's so therapeutic to listen to this podcast in lieu of boring my friends with my need to discuss every detail. I love it here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I love it here too.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Cara B is also very excited because after B, like Bumblebee, B, there are 4 exclamation points. It's a very excited name.
We're on the same level.
It's like Cara B! It's like very, very high energy.
I love it. I love it here. Cara B.
Next up, we have Aspiring Phoenix, who writes, a must listen for TLOU fans. Being the only person in my family and friend group who watches and plays TLOU, I have no one to discuss things with. So thank the universe for Jack and Andrew. The last cast not only satisfies the need for character and plot deep dives while providing a much desired comparison to the game, but they also drop some geek out worthy Easter eggs and point out cinematography choices that you may have missed. Jack and Andrew know what they're doing and clearly pour their love of TLOU into every episode. So grab a steaming cup of Joel's favorite brew and a box of tissues and make sure to add their podcast to your weekly rotation. Endure and survive. Aspiring Phoenix, thank you.
Aspiring Phoenix, thank
What
you
a
very
review.
much.
So many words.
We
Again,
we resonate with so many words, though. That's like our thing.
look, I don't know how. I have no idea how long this episode's going to be. God help me. But I love both. I love both ends of a review, a written review. Not to bring it up, Jim Wiz from a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
The full extent of the review was nicely done in quotation marks.
Yeah. Nicely done.
And I get it. I get it. And then also Aspiring Phoenix took the time to kind of elaborate, and I love that too. Incredible.
Love it. Yeah.
This one splits
Guys
the
are great.
difference, this final one, if you're ready. This is Big Nuffin, which is a great username.
Yes, it is.
The title is There Are a Lot of Last of Us Podcasts.
There are.
None of them definitively are this long. 5 stars. So
Thank you.
Big Nuffin is a person who listens to me because, again, it's at the end of an episode and I'm broken at that point. However, it's a good broken. But thank you.
Yeah.
Incredible 5-star reviews. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, guys. We'll make another Andrew will make another impassioned plea at the end of the episode.
I'll be writing it all throughout.
Yeah.
If you ever see me looking down, I'm literally scribbling what I'll say.
Yes.
I won't do that.
No, he won't do that. It's all on the fly because he's good like that. But speaking of Andrew, would you like to? Well, actually, I'm going to do the episode summary, and then I'll throw it to you.
Okay.
So, episode 7, Left Behind, the summary, as foretold by the HBO prophecy. As Joel fights to survive, Ellie looks back on the night that changed everything.
Oh my God.
It's pretty, it's good. It's a good summary. I think it does it justice.
It is a turning point. It is an inflection point, this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody told me whether they like these recaps that I do or they don't. I did 2 episodes without them and I did 4 with them. And nobody said that they love them or they don't like them. And so I'm just left here in the lurch. And I just wrote one anyway. So here we go. Left Behind.
In the lurch. Drama.
Things weren't looking too peachy when we last left Joel and Ellie. The episode opens with a long trail of blood leading to a garage of a long abandoned suburban home. I'm not a doctor, but I would say that Joel is in critical condition. He tells Ellie to go look for Tommy, and for a moment, she seems to at least consider it. Moments before walking through the door to leave, she hesitates, but as she crosses the threshold, we're in Flashback City. Ellie, Boston QZ, Fedra soldiers in training, Bethany, a bitch, gets punched for messing with Ellie's music. That's a very quick hit of what happened there, but I think it captures it. This lands Ellie in the principal's office. Her captain explains Fedra is the only thing holding everything together, and there are 2 paths forward for Ellie: doing shit jobs for the rest of her life or riding high as a captain. She chooses the latter. Cut back to Ellie's room. We look across from a very Ellie living space full of comics and space paraphernalia and cassette tapes to an empty bed with nothing on the walls. While asleep, the other bed's former tenant breaks in, Ellie's bestie, Riley. Riley's been gone for 3 weeks, and Ellie has started to think she was dead. Instead, Riley reveals she's joined the Fireflies. As a kind of apology, Riley offers Ellie the chance to come with her and have the best night of her life. They sneak out and cross the Boston rooftops like Batman before eventually arriving at their destination, the mall. 4, nay 5 wonders await Ellie. Riley later gives Ellie an incredible gift before saying she's leaving for Atlanta in the morning. This hurts Ellie, who moves to leave but ultimately comes back for her friend, and they decide they'll figure it out together and share a kiss. Because this show only wants to hurt us, an infected appears and eventually bites both of our protagonists. They decide to stick together, whether it's for 2 minutes or 2 days. Cut back to the present, Ellie returns to Joel with a needle and thread, determined to stitch up her protector and do her best to keep him alive. How's that?
It's very long. It's very long and detailed. I don't know. I feel like it makes what we do a little redundant.
It doesn't, because look, I said 4, nay 5 wonders await Ellie. And that's all I said. for the.
You're very heavy detail in the beginning, and then you taper off.
All right. Well, I don't know what to tell you. The important details happen in the beginning too. I don't know.
But in the middle and the end
No,
as
no,
well.
they're less important. They're less
Wow.
important. I left
Wow.
out what the gift was. The gift is very important. I just
Mhm.
said it was a gift. We didn't
Yeah.
explain why. Look, we got
Okay.
3 more hours of podcast. I only took
No,
up.
we do not. Oh my god. So let's get to it.
All right.
Episode 7, breakdown, roll credits. This is the 5th episode, for those keeping track, without a cold open. So now, I mean, does it matter? No, but we're gonna keep doing it
Yeah,
because we come this far.
we got to know.
So, we are now in a residential area. It is run down like everywhere else that we have seen in this world, and we see bloody drag marks leading to a house slash garage. Once we are inside there, we see a rusted bike with tires and the sounds of heavy breathing, yet we do not see who is doing the breathing, but we can kind of assume, of course. And then Joel and Ellie's backpacks on the ground, Callus shaking off snow. I've named the horse Callus, even though they didn't, I did. And remember, that is the name of the horse in the game that Joel dislikes greatly, but Ellie loves.
We'll see.
So the wind is howling, and then we see Ellie is tending to Joel, who is very obviously not doing well. He is in pain, clearly fighting to pass out or pass away, unfortunately. Ellie curses and asks for Joel's help, and he tells her here to leave, to take the gun and leave. But she tells him and yells at him basically to shut the fuck up. He grabs her, pulls her, and drives it home. Leave and go to Tommy. And after this, he shoves her away and she falls back onto the hard cement floor of the basement garage. I think it was the
I
basement.
think it was the basement
Yeah.
because the horse is in the garage.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. The game and the show were bleeding together. Which are
No.
also separate, but anyway.
Yeah.
So after that, he has tears in his eyes, but he just stares up at Ellie as she stares back at him, and then she stands, covers him with that heavy leather coat of his, and then they continue this looking at one another silently in a very kind of impassioned plea moment on Joel's end, and Ellie just sort of stone-faced but also so full of expression as well, like Bella Ramsey, my god, but we'll talk about that shortly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ellie turns away and leaves and runs up the stairs, but she leaves her pack behind, which is of course something to note, or worthy to note, and Joel cries as he watches her go. And Ellie pauses at the doorway, then grabs the knob, and the scene cuts to black very abruptly. But before we get there, so as we're seeing this residential neighborhood, I love that it starts off basically with a car on cinder blocks because
Yeah,
leave no supplies.
of course.
Like, we're going to take the tires, we're going to take the parts, we're going to leave the car though, because no, we don't need that. And again, it's just this continuation of an accurate portrayal of what the world would be like. And, to open that way, it's like so mindful of the details. But then we get to the drag marks of Joel's blood
Hmm.
and Ellie not thinking, maybe I should hide those. So it's like it's this dueling realism of a 14-year-old girl who doesn't know I have to hide my tracks. But also this depiction of the world of this is what people in society would do. It's great. It's like so true to the character and so true to the world, and it happens in like a 1-2 punch. So, I loved it.
Yeah, I don't know what the order of operations was in terms of filming this episode. Obviously, it was all broken and planned out, but it
Mhm.
is a nice foil to what we learn about in the flashback at the mall too. Like people took what they wanted and
And
left
left.
what was unimportant. And
Yep.
same deal here. It continues into it is not just within the context of the mall. It spilled out into society at large, right? Like
Mhm.
grab what you need and
Mhm.
leave the rest. Leave the unimportant stuff.
Yeah.
The Ellie
Yeah.
thing, probably just a moment. Probably just a moment of panic, right? Like the blood trail. Like it may, not thinking about, oh man, this is it's come on in,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that plays out.
Yes, again, no spoilers, but I think that that's a really good thing to remember, listeners at home who are not familiar with the game. That's all I'll say.
Spoilers.
So this very quick, not a spoiler,
I
just a
know.
suggestion.
Just a
Um,
suggestion.
a very
A
suggestion. Anyway,
very
so
suggestive suggestion.
yeah. So this entire moment with Joel and Ellie is in the beginning and the end of the episode is one of the most emotionally evocative sequences in the entire series thus far for me.
Mhm.
Uh, Not just the beginning, but the end and putting them together. And of course, we'll talk about the end. But there's this urgency, this high intensity, and it's almost like this holding on to letting go
Mhm.
thing that's happening. And it is peak Last of Us content. It is everything that it worries me a little bit for future events, and it kind of surprises me for things that have already happened,
Mhm.
like the conversation in the house in Jackson in last week. That was a pinnacle moment for Joel and Ellie in the games, and it didn't quite hit as hard on the show. But then in this episode, we have this very emotional moment which did not happen in the games, and we'll talk about why shortly. But yeah, it's like six in one hand, half a dozen in the other kind of thing happening with some of these scenes. But this one, probably my favorite, like emotionally high tense, um, emotionally driven scenes so far.
Yeah. This scene is why you hired Pedro Pascal and why you hired Bella Ramsey, in my estimation,
Mm,
because it's the moments between the dialogue
yes.
that is where the acting is happening, in
Mhm.
my humble opinion. And so it's like the look on Pedro's face, the look
Mhm.
on her face.
Mhm.
These two people are a presence when they are on screen, right? Especially
Yeah.
together, but like individually, if you just look at the things they've done outside of the show, this is what they bring. Like this
Mhm.
raw
Yep.
emotion
For
with
sure.
no words spoken.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic to look at.
I agree.
Yeah.
I really, really agree. And I mean, like, ding dong, Emmys are calling. But so, um, in that same sequence, like Ellie fighting and then turning away.
Mhm.
So I just want to remind everyone of her speech in the last episode to Joel and what she said to him in the bedroom. And just, I hit my mic. I will come back to this. But basically what comes around came right back around.
Mhm.
And we talk about how quickly that seems to happen in this show, which is a very good thing and can also be a little bit of a thing sometimes.
Sure.
But overall, just it's a very consistent thing, so it's wonderful. I think consistency is my biggest nitpicking point in any fictional property, like TV show, video game, movie. If it's inconsistent, I'm right out of it and just tearing it to shreds.
Yeah.
And this show is very hard to do that with. So,
Right.
not that I want to,
You're like, God
but
damn it.
yeah.
It's a really
Mhm.
we get the sense from this moment, if you were to slice off the beginning and end of this episode and put them together, and
Sure.
then how it is clearly the bookend of this middle part, it tells a lot about Ellie's character, that she is a person with grit, that she
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
that she doesn't give up,
Mhm.
that when she cares about somebody, she will literally do anything for them.
Mhm.
And it was a great, the show is truly all, I mean, and the game, but the show is truly about these parallels and driving that home. It's what do
Mhm.
you call it? Chiral, right? Like your hands, right?
Oh,
They're a mirror
yeah.
image of each other, but they
Mhm.
are different, but still
Sure.
a mirror image.
Mhm.
So th- I I'm continually impressed by like,
Mhm.
aha. That's how I feel about it. Especially for me, like I said in this episode, not having played that sequence of the game, how beautifully they were able to dovetail these two stories together. Because
Mhm.
again, just very generally talking about the game, this sequence left behind does not happen in the chronological telling of the game.
Mm-mm.
It's literally a piece that is outside of it
Mhm.
that you would have to put you have to slot in your own chronology, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I just thought that that was a really beautiful way to join these two things together with a scene that
Mhm.
we are very familiar with in chronology, and then a scene that in this case I know nothing about, but also
Mhm.
happens far later, right? Which
Yeah.
is or earlier, depending on how you want to look at it. But yeah,
Yeah. It's good. And last, Joel crying. So he is watching her every move, and we can only surmise in this moment that he likely believes that this will be the last time he ever sees Ellie,
yeah,
and that he's failed her just as he's failed Sarah over and over again in his dreams. So he knew that this would happen. He fought against this and inevitably ended up staying with excuse me, staying with her as we, see.
hmm
But I can't imagine what is going through his mind at that moment. It's probably just like, I can't I fucking knew this was gonna happen, and now I'm gonna die, and she's gonna fucking die because we are a week away from Tommy. What, fuck kind of thing, but also just absolute heartbreak and guilt.
yeah. I have nothing really to add to that other than this would be him failing in a way that he didn't anticipate,
Mhm.
where not she dies, but he dies. And I think that's kind of a fascinating play on,
Mhm.
like, assuming that she dies, he wouldn't be there to have experienced that in the way that he did with Tess and with Sarah as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a little bit of a reversal there. But yeah, it was
Mhm.
again, Pedro had very few lines of dialogue this
Yeah.
episode, and yet it
Mhm.
remains one of the a driving force of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go to the gym. This is our flashback here. Ellie with a Walkman in tow. God, I loved Walkmans back in the day.
Oh, so
Truly
wonderful.
great design. She's running laps in a gymnasium, wearing Fedra trainee sweats, like top and bottom, all
Mhm.
matchy matchy. Girl runs up next to her, smacks the earphones off her head. They go back and forth for a minute. Ellie wants it back. The girl doesn't want to run doubles because of Ellie's bad attitude. This is Bethany, by the way. Bethany.
Bitch.
Bitch. Bitchiny. Next, we see they don't want to fight each other. Well, Ellie, they say like Ellie doesn't want to fight, or they say that Ellie won't fight. Her friend fought for her, and then we see a look in Ellie's eyes, and she throws a punch. And the next thing we see her, the next moment we see her, she's in the officer's office, principal's office, I like to say, with a black eye. There is a
Mhm.
family picture on the man's desk. It's Captain Kwong. Uh, I love this actor, Terry. I can't remember his name. He's excellent, though. He talks of Ellie's poor behavior the past few weeks. They talk back and forth here. He won't punish her, but
Mm.
rather tell her the truth,
Mhm.
which is an interesting take when you're dealing with someone who he describes as smart.
Yeah.
If she keeps up her shit, she'll live a shitty life with Bethany as her leader, which sounds terrible. But if she turns it around, she could be an officer and lead a better, more comfortable life.
Mhm.
This officer gives a shit, and he tells her as such. That if Fedra fails, the people of Boston, the QZ, everybody will end up dead, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a staggering thing for Ellie to hear, right? They're holding it all
Mhm.
together. Ellie vocally chooses the better path as an officer, then requests to have her Walkman back, which I assume was confiscated. Captain Kwong gives it to her, and that is that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this.
So this scene opens, we get our first official needle drop of the episode,
One with
and it
many
yeah,
needle
well,
drops. But
3. I mean, it was really 3 or 4 if you
yeah,
wanna include the carousel song, which we will,
I
but,
do.
but it was Pearl Jam, and it was All or None, and just, the lyric specific, the opening lyric that we hear is, "A hopeless situation that I'm starting to believe."
Mm,
And that's what Ellie is listening to as she is running laps in the gym, and I think that these are fairly ominous lyrics given what we learn of Ellie in this flashback,
mm.
and really what's to be of her whole life, that we have experienced thus far in the games, but it's safe to say that what we are hearing is how she feels. and that's what we do with music, right? Like, if we're listening to a sad, somber song, it's because that's what we're feeling,
Yeah.
or that's what we're gravitating towards. So that's what we choose because we're feeling that way. It's all psyche and relative. But this also applies to Joel as well in his very injured state. Like, this is looking like a hopeless situation for him. So, I mean, it was just a perfect song choice for Ellie's situation in the past, Ellie and Joel's situation in the present, and nothing in these shows is by accident. Like, nothing at all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
masterfully done, everyone.
Yes. Mhm. A quick little Easter egg. I did not find this, but folks on Twitter pointed this out, so of course we have to talk about it. But the keychain that Captain Kwong sits on the desk, real quick, if you look at it, it is a Naughty Dog keychain logo.
Hey,
So again, for people at home who have not played the game, Naughty Dog is the studio that made The Last of Us, The Left Behind, and The Last of Us Part 2.
it makes here's what I'll say. Even though they moved the chronology of the story up 10 years, I
Mhm.
still feel like we're squarely in the point where Naughty Dog had made Crash Bandicoot. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe that's Captain Kwong's favorite video game.
Maybe.
And that's why he has it as a keychain. Who
Maybe.
knows?
Yeah. Because Naughty Dog's been around for 30 years
Yeah.
ish, right?
And again, Sony, essentially a Sony first party
Mhm.
for that duration. So yeah,
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
there we go.
We love Easter eggs like that. So Captain Kwong being the only one that we've met thus far, but the only Fedra officer to actually give a damn, is a polarization to what we just learned of the Kansas City quarantine zone. But it's another affirmation that everyone is not all good, not all bad, all this or all that. So there's these pockets of hope that persist despite all of the hardship around all of our, favorite characters, protagonists, even antagonists in the future. But it was just interesting that, you know, we have this speech from Henry talking about Killer City and all of the horrible things that Fedra did in that quarantine zone, and presumably all the other QZs around the country. But then we meet Captain Kwong, and we see this group of children like being trained, and it seems like a better, well-oiled machine. And even Ellie's beliefs about Fedra in this episode are polarization to what we should feel for Fedra. So it's interesting how they continue to draw these parallels and continue to draw on our empathy for different groups of people.
Yeah, no one's
Mhm.
all good, no one's all bad,
Yeah.
right? They're,
Mhm.
you know, Killer City again, it was potentially run by the Kansas City Mafia. So, um, as I
Nobody
state,
wrote in about that.
as I stated, nobody wrote in about that. That's unfortunate. There's still time. We still have a couple episodes left if you have any insights on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you in the mafia? Are
right.
you listening?
Would you like to be a confidential informant to our podcast? Uh, the
This is our CI, and it like cuts to someone. Hello, how are you?
I don't want to talk about this very much, but it very much was run by the Kansas City Mafia.
So sorry.
We don't like to talk about that, but yeah, things were good for a while there.
I'm so sorry for our listeners' ears.
just bring the volume down on that because the effect is really quite good. Just the cupping. Yeah. It'll look funny on video. So, youtube.com/TLU podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Right.
Yeah.
I keep saying that sort of stuff. It's not in keeping with Naughty Dog's nature as storytellers, and same with Craig Mazin. Truly, if you look back at his just most recent project, Chernobyl, right?
Yeah.
The way that the Russian government was portrayed in that series was not great. However, people
Accurate.
that were what did he describe himself as? The party man, right? A lifelong party man. The Stellan Skarsgård.
Oh,
a
yeah,
part, like
the
essentially
party.
like he was like a lifelong
Yeah.
politician, right?
Mhm.
He was like a force for good, right?
In the end, yeah.
In a corrupt, in a what appeared to me to be a very corrupt government, right?
Oh, yeah.
Same deal here. We have Captain Kwan may be the only one, right? But he is one, and that's interesting. It's an
Speaking
interesting.
of, just vamp for a little bit. I'm gonna grab a book off screen real quick
Okay.
and then bring it
Should I
back.
go back to the Kansas City Mafia?
Hello, I'm the informant.
I'm gonna vamp about something. I don't
I'm
even know
back.
what the hell. Oh,
This is a book called Midnight in Chernobyl.
okay.
I'm reading it because we did just recently watch Chernobyl, and also I did read somewhere that was in part part of the source material that Craig Mazin used for the show.
Oh, nice.
So I thought this is kind of important to read this. Ooh, the way that you just flippantly said they were, they were corrupt. Ooh, understatement.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. You never want to assume that someone is like mustache twirlingly comically villainous, even though that is true in the world, right? Some people are that guy, like Dick
Yeah.
Dastardly or whatever your frame of reference is for. Uh, that might be. I mean, that cartoon was even before my time. I don't know why I referenced that one.
Could have went Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil, but that's Dr. No from James Bond, but whatever. I'm sticking with Dick Dastardly. It's just a fun name to say,
Yeah.
really. But yeah, again, we could just say like all Fedra soldiers are dicks, like that guy from the first episode, and they're all comically bad, but that doesn't make for really great storytelling. Shades of Grey is what makes this entire narrative interesting, and that's where they like to explore that. Those are the themes, and I love that.
Yeah. Yes, I do agree, and thank you everyone for our little tangents here. This is why our episodes are 3.5 hours long. Which, by the way, Andrew's vamping way more than me. Not vamping.
All right, I will
Rambling.
not say a thing for the rest of the episode. I'm muting
No.
my microphone. I'm turning my camera off.
You get back here right now.
How dare I?
But we are now in Ellie's dorm. So there's this warm ambiance to this room. It's raining outside. We see dinosaurs, space posters, a no pun intended, this oughter be good, beside the switchblade on her bedside table. She's reading a Savage Starlight comic. This is all very Ellie. This is Ellie's environment. She has made it her environment, and I absolutely love it. Ellie flips through this issue, but she's not really reading the book. She's in that I'm seeing it, not really comprehending it mode. And she slaps it down eventually and then stares at the empty bed across the room. She's clearly frustrated by the fact that it is empty. And then we hear a voice, a disembodied voice on the other side of the door, and then a knock saying that it's time for lights out. It's nearly 2 a.m. now, so she has fallen asleep. She is snoring softly. The rain has stopped. Then there's this quick little moment with some cassette tapes of Import. Which this is a game reference. I can't talk too much about this, so I didn't put it in the TV game spoiler section because it's too much of a spoiler.
Sure.
So I'm just going to leave that out. But then we see a Mortal Kombat 2 poster, some mountains, Rome, etc. on the wall. And then we see someone quietly enter the bedroom by an unlocked window, the unlocked window. And they cover Ellie's mouth with their hand, but she fights them off pretty quickly and then pulls her switchblade on them. And of course, this turns out to be Riley. And Ellie wants to know where she's been. And Ellie's like, well, like, what the fuck are you doing? Where have you been? And Riley kind of defends what she did, saying that the joke was better in her head. The joke of sneaking in and covering her mouth with her hand.
Classic,
hilarious joke there. But it didn't work. And Ellie's a little sour here. And she says, it's been bad. And she thought that Riley was dead. And she was gone for 3 weeks. And she kind of continues here saying, like, you could have talked to me. I'm your best friend. Any shit that you're going through that caused you to run away, you could have sat down with me and talked about with me. But Riley just kind of sidesteps that and asks about the black eye. And then, of course, continues to threaten the person that gave it to Ellie. But Ellie already fucked Bethany up. And yeah, girl, fuck Bethany. And Ellie continues to ask where Riley has been, and Riley eventually tells her she joined the Fireflies. But Ellie doesn't believe this until Riley reveals the handgun tucked away in her jeans. This is proof enough. And Ellie freaks out just a little bit, but Riley asks her to come with her for the best night of her life. She knows that she's going to say no, but then she knows she's going to say yes
Mhm.
because she knows this person. And she also knows that, and she being Riley, will not take no for an answer and directs Ellie to get dressed. And Ellie changes as Riley looks away, and we stare again at the tapes on the table and the Walkman. Ellie continues to kind of just dig for information like, well, where are we going now? Because the park is off limits. But Riley says they're not going to the park, they're going to a secret place. And Riley talks about trust here and how Ellie should trust her with her life. Of course, Ellie
Okay.
does.
Okay.
But there are no guards outside because Fedra is fucking stupid, according to Riley. And they take the fire escape ladder down to an alley, and immediately they need to hide from a Fedra truck that is patrolling, shining its light down the alley. And Riley admits that, yeah, they're off to a rocky start, and maybe they're not so fucking stupid. But she mentions an incident at the 7-Eleven that caused or Ellie mentions an incident at 7-Eleven that caused the scar above her right eyebrow and how she doesn't want to repeat that. And Riley comes down on Ellie for messing with Bethany and getting her hurt enough to need stitches. And they kind of bicker back and forth here because pot calling the kettle black. But who among us really has not done that to our besties? But they go up through a window, a damn window, according to Riley, and drop down into an old building. And Ellie pulls her busted ass flashlight out. And Riley notes that Firefly flashlights are better, supposedly. And we will find that out. But they need to climb a few floors, not 2, but rather 7, and Ellie is huffing and puffing at this. And eventually they get to where they need to be, and they shine their lights down this hallway, and they see a dead man propped up against the wall. And they approach him slowly, and yep, he is dead, and he's disgusting, according to Ellie, who is right all up in his face, by the way.
She's like, ugh.
Yeah, just like right there. Like, back up, girl, it's okay. But there's a real bottle of liquor here. It's not moonshine, it is from before. But he apparently mixed pills and booze, and boom, he died. But Ellie believes that it was an intentional move on this man's part. And just then, the floor beneath the man gives way and he falls through. And Ellie laughs like a crazy person as this happens. And Riley keeps her head turned away because she doesn't want to see. But before we move to the next section, sorry. So
unbelievable.
I didn't know if I was unmuted. But Ellie's bedroom is every bit a reflection of who she is up to this point. The things that she loves, the things that she fantasizes about, getting away, escapism. It's all of these ways for her to not be where she is, essentially. This routine life of an orphan stuck in Fedra, being trained to have, some sort of military post one day, dealing with the Fireflies or the infected or people who, go AWOL, whatever. Like, it's all very mundane, and I just don't think that that's the life that Ellie wants or believes that she should have. So she takes to escaping to all of these wonderful things. And I love that they did such a beautiful job incorporating all of that. And they posted, so Naughty Dog posted a picture on Twitter. And if you zoom in, you can see a whole lot more than what was in the show. So there's a giraffe, there's more dinosaurs, there's so much space. There's just every little bit things that are in game 2 and relevant to game 2, which will hopefully be shown in season 2 and 3 and beyond, if that's what will be. But it was a beautiful tribute to her character. And I loved it.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
I don't think an officer would be reading Savage Starlight. They might be reading like The Art of War or something. I don't know. Something quite a bit more dry than Savage Starlight. But hey, yeah. It was
Yeah.
really when you look at that, you get a sense of who she is. It's a great shorthand.
Yeah. Perfect. That's a perfect way to say it. Great shorthand. Riley coming back and revealing that she's a Firefly, much to Ellie's shock, and we are trained to kill Fireflies comment. So I want to discuss this a little bit with you. Just a little bit, because we're going to progressively build on this as the early scenes and conversations with Riley and Ellie take place. Because we can back up. Riley is very anti-Fedra. And she seemed to be anti-Fedra before even joining the Fireflies. That was even part of the reason why she was brought into the Fireflies, because of how, she sees them as fascists and, a regime and a dictatorship versus anything uh good for the people of the quarantine zone. Whereas Ellie is kind of like, no, like, this is the structure that we need. I was a little surprised at that, because think I don't think Ellie was so vocal about her support of Fedra before.
Mm.
Not that she was ever, fuck Fedra and bastards, but it just was interesting that they kind of hammered it home. And again, I think it's one of those things where polarizations, no one is all good, no one is all bad, and how we perceive things is on a person to person basis. And we have Ellie, who is this orphan and dropped off to Fedra by Marlene, who is the leader of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
So it's like even Marlene sees maybe this structure will be better for her. That's a safer place for her than what we are doing here.
Mhm.
We're not, we need years to establish ourselves instead of having a baby grow up and whatever. I just it's very interesting. But then Riley, who had a family, we learn had a family and lost that family, is like, fuck Fedra. It's just great. I know what I'm trying to say. Am I saying it? I don't know. But
And will it be said by the end? Who knows?
yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's hammered home. It's mentioned at least twice, potentially 3 times in this episode. I feel like 3 times is the charm, but I only remember twice that Ellie doesn't know everything, right?
Yeah.
And that is a direct line from Riley to her. And so that is that thing, like, you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
right? So if Ellie grew up from birth in the confines of this world,
Mhm.
then that's all she knows.
Yeah.
She's never probably even met a Firefly. And so she just assumes that they are the other, the bad, because that's all she's heard her entire life. It's
Mhm.
one of those moments where I think she is a different person by the time we meet her in the first episode, right? I don't know
Sure.
what the exact time frame is between those two things, right? But
Mhm.
we learn that Riley had a family and lost that family. And so there was a period of time for her, we don't know how long, really,
Mhm.
where she knew potentially both sides of life, right? Life
Sure.
before and life after. And it makes sense that a person like that, a bit more, I don't want to say cultured, but like knowed, would have potentially conflict within them about
Mm.
what Fedra's trying to accomplish. So yeah,
Sure.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, this impeccable balance that
Mhm.
they're doing with characters. Even on a one-to-one basis, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So this is the first time Ellie has this iconic scar over her right eyebrow. And this is the first time ever, literally ever, that it has been mentioned as to what might have happened to cause this. And now we have this weird kind of esoteric 7-Eleven story that we know nothing about,
Sure.
but that an incident or a situation, I think was the word, that they used happened. And now she's like, no, I don't want another. I want my left eyebrow to be fine. Thank you very much. And I like that. I like these little um glimpses, these ambiguous glimpses into the past, because not every single story needs to be told to us.
Right.
They can just be little pockets, little charming pockets that we can see basically the ends of, and that's all we need.
Again, you know me.
Mhm.
I am a firm believer, and I do not need everything explained to me. I just
Yeah.
love. It's a thing that is like, maybe you noticed it, right?
Mhm.
There are enough close-ups of Ellie in this show that you may have noticed it,
Yeah.
and then they just remark on it, like, no, it's like, oh, that happened. That's a thing
Mhm.
that happened. We don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's between them, which
Mhm.
is a great little establishing of their closeness, their bond,
Yeah.
and that's it.
And their history and some of the shenanigans they've gotten up to.
Right, of course. Who
It's
among us?
wonderful.
Who
Yeah.
among us?
Who among us? Ellie out of breath on the stairwell. So this again, this is a wonderful little throwback, to she's huffing and puffing and only climbs 7 flights of stairways and bitches and complains.
Sure.
And even at the end of racing on the rooftop, she bitches and complains because she needs, a moment to catch her breath. But it's hilarious because then you go back to episode, was it 4 or 5, where she's making fun of Joel after climbing 33 flights of stairs for him being broken
Yeah.
and calling him an old man. It is just, again, this funny little thread of like, I'm gonna talk shit about you, but also I was suffering the same not 3 weeks prior.
Secretly, I
Yeah.
was where you were.
Yeah. So I can make fun of you. Yeah,
Right.
it's great. It was just a little thing I wanted to point out.
Mhm.
So the man who may and almost assuredly committed suicide in the hallway with the combination of booze and pills, which is very dangerous. Be careful, people. But to spend all your cards on that bottle and the pills sounds like a definitive way of taking care of a problem that needs this terminal end, for lack of a better expression, because I don't want to keep using the S word. But the floor giving way, and this is kind of the part that I really wanted to talk about. The floor giving way tracks because of all the nastiness that happens to a human being after we die.
Mm.
And the show again, we've talked about consistency is the number one word that we've talked about today. And this is absolutely an example of that, where like, did he have to fall through the floor to show like this is what happens after we die? No. But it also served to show Ellie's like maniacal laughter in a sense,
Sure.
which like we are going to talk about that in the next section, but we can touch on briefly here. Ellie, we've been talking about, has been a little unhinged since the start of the show.
Can you be a little unhinged, or are you?
Yes.
Is it hinged or not?
You can be a little unhinged. There's hinges that still work that
There's
are just
there's
not
a
fully
modicum
secure.
of unhingety. I understand.
Yeah, it's me.
It's me.
It's me. But it's more characterizations being established and things that happened weeks ago or now months ago from where Ellie and Joel are now. And she still has some of these personality traits, of course, because we remain who we are for the most part,
Mm.
despite traumatic circumstances here and there,
Every
all
now
the
and
fucking
then.
time for Joel and Ellie. But yeah, again, she's an interesting one, and we are going to talk more about that, but I don't want to go too deeply into it just yet.
Okay, fair enough.
Mhm.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the rooftops.
Let's.
They obviously they're up there. They're laughing. Ellie laughed more at the dead guy, but they move on to the booze. Right? They each take a drink, and Ellie forces, "It's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I love it. It's so good." They talk about dead bodies. Riley saw her parents dead, we learn. More drinks to follow that comment. Ellie asks to hold the gun, which again is a very consistent theme with Ellie. Ellie makes fun of Riley here, similar to the way she makes fun of Joel. Eventually, Riley gives her the gun and she remarks that it's heavy. Ellie gets the bottle, Riley gets the gun. That is the distribution of responsibilities tonight.
Yeah.
They poke fun at how Riley ended up in the situation she's in, how she became a firefly. Ellie was in the hole, and Riley wondered on the way back. Wandered, and on the way back, Marlene, an old woman, that's how she describes her, I don't know, 40, 50, old, appreciated her stealth maneuvering, right? And then she Marlene asked her opinion on Fedra. And then Riley gives it, fascist dicks, I think she says, or something along those lines. Marlene offered her to join, and she did. No weird initiations, just a yes, and then in the Fireflies, apparently. Ellie comments about how easy it seems to give up everything you know. And Ellie believes in Fedra to a degree, it seems. I believe it's more than she even lets on at this point. Again, just for it's been her whole life, but it's neither here nor there. Marlene, so now they're on a mission, and now is not the time to argue, right? They're getting into a little bit of a tiff, but they're like, eyes on the prize, eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
They jump from one rooftop to the next here. I don't know if this is actually true in Boston, that there are alleyways about this small, because it looks about 3 feet between each building. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to not just have them, but hey,
Maybe.
movies, television.
Maybe.
Going fast, they hit every mark, they make their way without any trouble. It's a lot of fun. It's a really nice sequence.
Mhm.
They finally get to the point where Ellie needs a second. We see a wide shot of the QZ. The lights below are brand new, like right below this roof that we're on. They're wired up because there are now more people living in the QZ, so they power up new apartment buildings. But Fedra are fascist dickbags to Riley, starving their own people, etc. She lists all these reasons why she believes that. Ellie counters with fireflies blowing up the storage depot. You know, there'd be food for people if you weren't blowing all our shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Propaganda bullshit keeps going back and forth here, right? They just keep throwing it back at each other. No one is all good. No one is all bad, essentially, is what this comes down to. Riley stops the spiraling back and forth with Ellie, and says it's okay not to know everything, right? Which is an interesting line to throw at Ellie, I think.
Yeah.
But they have arrived where they're going, and Ellie sees that they're at the mall. Rumors of infected in there because it's sealed off. To which Riley responds, if it's sealed off, why isn't it sealed off? Really makes you really.
So Ellie and alcohol and Riley. So this is different to the DLC, but it's still a fun look into the link between this moment and, of course, Ellie's moment with Joel by the campfire, where she's like, still gross.
Yeah, right. We just saw it. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, threads, consistency, wonderful. I don't want to say too much about the difference between the game and the DLC, because
Stop saying stuff. Stop saying too much.
I'm not saying too much because
I know.
if you've played the games, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, then I might be boring. So, I might be boring people. So it's not about not spoiling, but they in the game they they take a sip of alcohol in the mall at a camp, like of someone who set up camp there that they know, and Ellie knows very well. So they kind of cut and scrapped all of that and now put it with the rooftops and just shared it as a Riley Ellie thing upon coming this after coming upon this dead guy. So
okay,
it was just interesting changes. That's all.
All right.
And here we are. So yeah, Ellie is definitely a bit more unhinged than Riley. Not that I think Riley is unhinged. I really don't. I think she's solid.
Riley is hinged.
She is hinged.
And Ellie is unhinged.
Which is why it works.
Opposites truly do attract.
Yes. But again, we go back to the episode 1 and 2. I remember using words like rabid and just chaotic to describe Ellie. And now we see her months back from where we are now. Because, the 3 months on the road, the 4 week, just like, we're estimating like a 4.5 month, whatever window. Plus the week it took for them to get from Jackson to where they are now.
Yes.
So it's just interesting to see her laugh like an absolute loon at a man who overdosed, died, and fell through the floor because of his post-mortem process happen. Like it's a different take on Ellie for me. And I'm still not entirely sure I love it that much. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it, but it's different.
I think it's probably just a person who looks at the world a little bit a little through a layer, right? Maybe a little disconnected from it. Like it's the sheer comedy of a person falling down, right?
Yeah.
But to us, you're like, oh, that is a dead body. Right?
Yeah.
But to her, it's just, it seems to me like it's almost like someone slipping on ice, right? You're like, they fell down, right? That's kind of how she's treating it, which I am again, I'm not a doctor. That's the second time I'll say this on this episode. I don't know if that's a healthy outlook to have. I don't know. Maybe it is. Who knows?
It could be a way for her to cope through extremely just extreme situations that again, we're under the assumption that she's been with Fedra since she's been a baby.
Mhm.
She hasn't come up against many moments like this, and maybe a part of that kind of armor she's built up because of her life is humor.
Yeah,
And we see that with the pun books and things like that. Like that's what we talked about a lot on Wayfair, and when she whips out the pun books, she uses them to diffuse situations,
of course.
to bring the tension levels back down. I think a little bit of the opposite is happening in the show, where humor is being used to kind of elevate the tension in certain ways, because I was like, "Oh god." And then she starts laughing crazily and I was like, "Oh god." That
You're like, oh, an enhancement.
yeah. So it's just interesting.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Ellie with the gun curiosity and then the sass. These are more origins to her character and things that we are now way more familiar with because of her interactions with Joel. Just a simple little notation there. And the mall. So I want to ask you, Andrew, and anyone listening, because I'm
Okay.
curious.
Yeah.
TLOUpodcast@gmail.com. Do you think the mall, a mall, would be a good location to fortify?
Yes and no.
Why yes?
Yes, at the highest level, because it's a mall. It is a monument to capitalism, and
Yes.
therefore it must be protected at all costs. So you think about the grates that come down over every entrance and exit of the mall at large. Then on a per store basis, many of them also have grates that come up and down.
Yeah.
And so, yes, of course, that is it's an ideal place. It is the setting for Dawn of the Dead, the George Romero and eventual Zack Snyder remake of that property. And at first glance, it's like, we have everything we need here, right? If you were to get to a mall early in an apocalypse of a zombie type nature, right?
Yeah.
You'd be set for a pretty long time if you're able to. The issue, as with all things, is that malls are generally huge and sprawling. And so you never know who or what might also be lurking in there if you haven't cleared the entire thing.
They're also like kind of a central hub, so everybody might have the same idea. And then you have trouble with people trying to do the same thing that you're doing, but being irrational about it instead of working together.
I would encourage you to watch the film Dawn of the Dead.
I will not, because I don't like zombies.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, again, we have seen it. We have seen this happen in media. That's why I say yes and no. It's a great idea, but it's like many people's great idea. And so therefore it is an awful idea. You want to go to a place that is a great idea that nobody else thinks of. That's the best part. That would be the best.
We have to think about that, but not share, because then everyone listening to our podcast will go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So yeah, you want to keep it from the listeners. I understand.
No, I would never. We'll take all the listeners with us. We trust you guys not to fucking kill us if we all have to end up in an apocalyptic situation
I don't
together.
know. Cara Carabi, they want to come with us. Clearly, they love it here.
Let's go. We're going. We're all going to survive together. No, everyone has a job. It's going to be great.
Where you would want to go, I'll throw this out there as just a quick example. I hate that I keep getting off on tangents here. Let me just give you an example of a good one, right? In your town, if you are on one of the seaboards, right, you may have access to go tour a historic battleship. That's where you want to be, because you could pull up the plank and every one of those doors closes and goes like you can and you are in there and you don't have to worry. That's a good idea.
Yes. I mean, ships do break down though. They need maintenance.
I understand that part.
Who's gonna get down there and do the underwater welding? It's not gonna be me.
We're just going to seal it off. We'll seal off the lower decks. As the water rises to the one deck at a time, we just seal off that. So we lose space over time. But ultimately, I'll probably be dead by the time the whole boat sinks, and that's okay.
That's true.
I will not live as
die.
long as the boat. I can say that. The boat will outlive me, right?
I will rust faster than any metal, for sure.
That's a problem for the next generation to worry about, you know? It's a lot.
Wow, that's selfish. All right, let us know, guys.
Yeah, the
what you
battleship.
think about malls.
Yeah, we'll
and
meet
battleships.
you here, right outside Philadelphia, over on the Camden side, which is kind of an annex of Philadelphia. We'll take that part. The SS New Jersey, one of the most decorated warships of all time. We could all live on that motherfucker.
Yeah,
that ship is massive. We could all live on that thing together. Let's go.
What about the historic ship down across from IKEA?
Yeah,
what is that one?
I can't remember what it's called. It's
like
a mini
the
Titanic.
fucking SS Philadelphia or some shit.
It's not the Spirit of Philadelphia, but it is.
I didn't say the Spirit.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm thinking out loud to myself. The Spirit of Philadelphia is like a booze cruise that you go on.
That's not it.
You may have that in your town as well. That would probably be a good one if you just want to have one last party. You can just go on the Spirit of City and drink yourself to death.
And then just fall overboard. And there you go. You're done. Let the fishes have you. So we are now in the mall. Ellie and Riley drop down through a hole in the roof, and it is slimy and gross because, yes, that is what happens if left to the elements. But once Fedra connected the new block with the lights that we just discussed previously, it wired the mall again, although they are unaware of that, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And Riley directs Ellie to go to a place, and though Ellie fights back initially, she does follow Riley's orders and goes. And she walks through 2 sets of doors before her flashlight begins to act up again, but it doesn't matter. The mall comes to life all around her, and it is absolutely stunning. And she has this moment, though, when Riley finally joins her, where she's like, wait, the lights, aren't they going to see us? But no one will find them because all of the lights are hidden behind the mall bunker. You know, the mall's a bunker now, so no one's going to see. Riley, although, I mean, we did hear a helicopter at one point in the Boston QZ, so what if a helicopter flew over the mall and just saw it all lit up?
All I'm going to say is it's probably not very cost effective to launch the copter.
And that's one quarantine zone had one. That doesn't mean every single one does.
Yes. So that's all I'll say is that I feel like the helicopter is for the utmost emergency. Like, we are overrun. They're coming in. Captain Kwan needs to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
One of those situations.
Yeah. And with all the Firefly activity going on in the Boston QZ, that was likely why they did that, because of all the bombings, like the recent bombings and stuff like that. So I agree. I was just saying.
That's right.
There's a lot of confidence that no one will see them there, but is that true? But anyway, Riley promises to show Ellie the 4 wonders of the mall, which I absolutely love. And Ellie is transfixed, but even more so that Riley planned stuff for them to do. And Take on Me by Aha begins to play here. Significance galore.
And gamers
galore.
Everywhere began weeping openly.
Yes. But we won't tell you why if you're not a gamer, and that's fine. Just remember that. But Ellie obsesses over the escalator, and we are reminded again, us, the viewers, of how much of our lives, our day-to-day lives, that we take for granted. And 4 wonders suddenly become 5 after this wonderful moving staircase. But Ellie trips and Riley saves her bacon on the way down. But they can't just marvel at this. They are on a schedule, so they need to go.
Just as a really quick also aside, that just like a 100% reminded me of the movie Elf, which Buddy also discovers an escalator. And I absolutely just loved it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a good pull. We see a bunch of stores here. We also see a poster for Dawn of the Wolf Part 2, which is coming soon to a theater near you, which is right outside of the theater in the mall, of course, and on. And thankfully, the mall is empty. But we learn what me and Andrew talked about. Me and Andrew. Me and Andrew.
Andrew. It's my birth name.
Your government name. But we learned here that some stores are empty and some are not. And the stuff that is gone is what people needed most back in the initial days of the outbreak. So sneakers and soap, absolutely needed. Lingerie, not so much. Nobody gives a fuck.
Mm.
But there's a lovely moment by said lingerie store with about Ellie wearing that stuff, which is a comment from Riley. It's a little bit of a joke. But as Riley walks away, Ellie kind of goes back and fixes her hair and tries to envision herself by standing in front of a mannequin and having that reflection. And it's an interesting moment.
Mhm.
Because of what we know happens between these characters. But eventually she leaves and she's called away. And they stop here, and Ellie closes her eyes and admits to trusting Riley with her life. And Riley leads her along by the hand until she reveals this beautifully lit up carousel to Ellie. And Riley turns it on as Ellie steps onto it, and a music box version of The Cure's Just Like Heaven begins to play.
Oh.
And they walk around one another for a bit before climbing onto horses and starting to, and just sharing this experience beside one another. Some very telling looks are shared, but everything gets blanketed under the "you're drunk" excuse. And of course, at that they drink more, which
As one does.
we've been there. And Ellie longs for Riley. This is absolutely evident in the way that Bella Ramsey conveys these looks
Mhm.
and acts these looks. It was just an absolute longing on Ellie's face. This is not just her best friend at all. So it starts off that way, when they're kind of bickering back and forth in the dorm, and then even a little bit in the alleyway and so on and so forth, but now the tone has absolutely changed. But the moment ends too soon with the carousel breaking down because it's been 20 years of no maintenance. Of course it's going to break down. So Ellie gets serious here, and she asks about the fantasy of the Fireflies and their mission and what they attempt to do, and also why Riley left. And Riley says that change has happened in other quarantine zones because of the Fireflies. Like, this is a doable thing, a believable thing. Things can be set right.
Mm.
But Ellie just wants her friend, her person to come back, that they are the future generation and they can make things better. But Riley gets a little somber here and says that she turns 17 next month, and this is the age of when Fedra gives their assignments to their now soldiers. And Captain Kwong gave Riley sewage detail. So basically she's going to be standing guard while others shovel shit, and that's clearly what Fedra thinks of her. And she didn't share this with Ellie, but instead panicked and ran. And I think there was probably a level of embarrassment there as well.
Mhm.
And just I can't even reveal this to my person. I need to just leave, which she came back, so I don't want to say it was cowardice wrapped up in there as well, but Riley says that the longer that she was away, the harder it was for her to come back to Ellie. And Ellie gets it, and she genuinely means, I understand. But Riley says the only thing that she misses about Fedra is Ellie. And it makes a tiny bit of difference to Ellie, but it does absolutely make a difference. But now we know that they're 2 wonders down with 3 to go. But Ellie's like, how the hell can you follow the carousel? And really, we're kind of asking ourselves the same question.
How do you top this? Well,
Yeah. But wait, there is more.
Find out on our next episode of the last
Yeah.
Mythos.
We're done. Bye. No. So these girls, they are loud as hell in this mall. And I know that they mentioned there's no infected and it's basically a bunker and sealed off,
Mhm.
but not really sealed off. But even jumping down into the mall, they're loud. They are just loud, and it's such a difference to the journey with Joel, which is just so quiet.
Right.
And even the moments with Henry and Sam, just so quiet. And then we have these 2 teenagers just like loudness in a mall, which is so classic teenage.
Right. Yes. This
Mhm.
is what happens when you don't have to care.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah. It is nice. And it's real. It's real and it's relatable. So
Mhm.
great. So I love all the advertisements that were defaced along the way. So we see, models with their teeth blackened out like they're missing teeth, or models with lipstick drawn all over them. And it is just classic bullshit human behavior
Yeah.
that when the world goes to shit, one, we're going to loot and take what we need. And two, we're probably going to draw some bullshit, maybe a penis here and there. That's just what we do.
Yeah.
It was great to see
I
that.
feel like it's, it's the law. You really have to draw a couple dicks on the wall.
Yeah.
Just kind of leave your mark, right?
Yeah.
As it were. I was here. I exist.
Yeah.
I drew this dick.
Here. Yes.
Sign it like Van Gogh would sign his, you just put your little right at the bottom.
Done. Art.
I may not survive this.
Permanent art.
But my art will.
But my dick will.
But my dick will survive. I think is the key takeaway of the apocalypse. My dick endures. My dick will endure and survive. We got there. We got there eventually.
It's funnier coming from a man than me, but yeah, it's just, oh my gosh. Anyway, so we get needle drop number 2 of the episode.
Yeah.
Which is The Cure's Just Like Heaven. So I want to discuss this. I mean, again, the song choices are so fucking perfect going back to episode 1.
Yeah.
With Depeche Mode. And now, in this episode, we have Pearl Jam and The Cure and Aha. Like, there's so, by the way, this is technically needle drop number 3. So Aha was needle drop number 2. I just mixed up the numbers. Sorry. But this, it was just, could they have picked a more perfect song for Ellie and Riley on the carousel? I don't think so.
Here's all I'll say. Here's what I'll say. The episode opens with our needle drop of Pearl Jam.
Mm-hmm. Ominous.
Actually, within the context of the show, I believe the 90s means there's a new pickup or something, right?
No, there is no 90s. It's 60s, 70s,
60s,
or 70s.
So 90s means nothing, right?
Yeah.
And the 80s means trouble. And we get 2 80s needle drops in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And trouble is a brewing, I believe. Well, only in hindsight do we realize it. But it is interesting to see the decades of music they pick and how it relates back to that first set of codes. That's all I'll say. It's kind of remarkable, even this level of consistency that they keep.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like layers.
Yeah.
It's like layers upon layers of, we're going to continually go back to that radio code, but we're also going to bring more meaningfulness to the situations that our characters are in by using musical lyrics and the tone.
Exactly. Right.
It's amazing.
So we get both things. So while we are having a great time on a carousel listening to The Cure, which it doesn't seem like carousel music to me. It doesn't scream carousel, but hey, I liked it.
I mean, they prettied it up in carousel, like ding, ding, ding,
It's the what the hell do they call that style?
Like
Calliope or something. Yeah, like an organ style. And it's fine. It's great. I mean, like, it's a great arrangement of the song and very recognizable, but still, you're like, 80s means trouble. 80s means trouble.
Yeah.
So always keep that in mind. I think it's worth noting. But yeah,
I agree. I do agree. And this moment is a beautiful start. Like, this whole thing is beautiful from start to finish with Ellie and Riley. And although we know where this is going, some of us knew where this was going because of the DLC. It was obvious that these two people care deeply for one another in ways that go beyond friendship.
Yeah.
And Ellie was vulnerable in this moment. She didn't throw any kind of jokes in there, no sass, no biting commentary. She just listened to her friend, asked the appropriate questions, and spoke her truth to Riley. And at the core of Ellie, that is who she is. That is really, truly who she is. We all have, our own levels of bravado and this kind of shield that we present to the world. But when we are comfortable with people and situation dependent, that's when we can just be ourselves. and not feel, like a vein is exposed or that we're doing something awkward or weird. And it was really beautiful to have. I mean, in this whole episode, we run the entire gamut with Ellie.
Yeah.
So with Joel in the beginning with Riley, in the middle with Riley, at the end with Riley, and at the end with Joel. And I I mean, if Bella Ramsey wins an Emmy, it will be for this episode. I really truly believe it will be for this episode and what she did and brought to the character.
All right. Well, I mean, we haven't seen everything yet.
No, I and that also go
Okay.
like next week. Oh God, I don't even want to talk.
We can't talk about next week. Hasn't happened yet.
I know.
What are you talking about?
Nothing.
I'm talking about the photo booth, which is the third wonder.
Yes.
They settle in and they pay a $5 fee. Riley just pulls out a $5 bill, which is very funny. It's a very funny moment in this world that we live in where she pulls $5 out of her pocket and you realize that later there's just money on the ground everywhere. So it's like, oh, here we go. And then they kind of get to posing while they're in this photo booth. The sequence is it's adorable between these two, who I'm assuming neither has had a photo booth experience before.
Yeah.
But it's great. Ellie, eventually they kind of like settle into each other like a head on the shoulder type thing. But Ellie eventually pushes Riley off after lingering for too long. The photos print and only one is really visible, and it's great and it's good enough to keep. So Ellie keeps it. Riley just hands it to her. She folds it over and puts it away. They exit and move on to their next wonder. It's the fourth, and it's awesome, and it may break Ellie's brain. It is Riley tells Ellie to stop before they get there. They're walking. She tells her to stop and listen.
Yeah.
And it's a fully functional arcade, Raja's arcade. It looks incredible. And I guess maybe this would hold up realistically. Like, not a lot of people are like, I got to steal me a pinball machine.
No.
More important things to worry about. They enter, they walk past a whole, the whole world is lit up around them. Very 80s, like purples and pinks and magentas and stuff like that. Racing games, pinball machines, you name it. Ellie sits at one of the racing games, Daytona USA, a perfect game, and inquires about having money, coins to be able to play. Riley busts open a change machine and just splashes these all over the ground. It's a very funny sequence, and she says she broke it open yesterday in preparation for today. They bypass the racing game in favor of, yes, you guessed it, you called it, Mortal Kombat 2. Riley knew she'd love this and walked her right to it. They enter their coins and get to fighting. Ellie is terrible at first. She's losing quickly. Flawless horse shit. For a flawless victory. Iconic, Riley, truly. We get a classic finish him. It is brutal. That is how Melina kills people. She breathes them in and spits out their bones. It's funny to note there were about 6 rib cages that came out of her. Just a fun thing to note about how that game's physics works. Sorry, I've got the rib cages got me. Riley has very clearly played this already, apart from Ellie, but they decide to go again. And as they play, the camera swings out and down to a darker section of the mall, into a doll store. Creepy ass shit. An infected is propped up against the wall. His mycelium is spreading all around him. And he wakes to the echoes of Riley and Ellie playing and takes a deep breath. We're back at the arcade. Ellie finally kicks some ass. She asks Riley what to do to win and gets her instructions. Ellie wins and they celebrate together very closely before Riley breaks up the party with, next thing. Ellie takes a moment here. You could see that the wind is a little bit out of her sails. She's quiet. And then she says it's getting late. She needs to get back. Riley counters with they have a few hours left, but Ellie can't get in trouble again. And she's like, I'll meet you here tomorrow. But Riley entices Ellie with, I got you a gift. And Ellie, like all of us, but especially probably in the apocalypse, cannot refuse the allure of a gift.
Yes. So 2 things real quick. Um, Raja's Arcade is the actual name in the DLC, so that was awesome
Great holdover.
to see everything just lit up and come to life, because in the video game, nothing is powered. The mall is not powered. It is just, everything is imagination. But Riley still takes Ellie there, and she plays The Turning, the video game with the character Angel Knives, and basically has Ellie, it's this beautiful moment where she has Ellie immerse herself and then gives her the clues of like what you need to do to win. So they brought some of that over into this sequence
Mm-hmm.
with like, how do I win? You know, hit up, down, blah, blah, blah. You know, so that was just a wonderful thing to see. And I neglected to write that down in the note, in the note section, but I didn't want to forget about it because I'd be yelled at. But so yes, the normalcy, going back to the beginning, the normalcy of the photo booth moment, really the normalcy of all of this is both wonderful and heartbreaking as a fan of the game, and now, of course, a fan of the show. Because we know, and by we, I mean everyone who's played the game, so not you, Andrew, but we know,
Wow.
like, we can enjoy, it's this weird, really fantastic thing of we know what's going to happen. And even you and I, like people who are listening who have played the games, both games, the DLC, everything, we know what's going to happen, but we are still able to enjoy the journey that we're on right now.
Mhm.
And I do remember being a little concerned about that. And I never thought about it fully until the Left Behind episode and then doing these notes. And I was like, oh shit, I am still really enjoying this despite all the things that I know, even from episode 1, like knowing Henry and Sam were gonna die, knowing Tess was gonna die, knowing Riley was gonna die. Like, I knew all of these things were gonna happen, but I still have enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah.
And that's a really, I think that's, again, just another strong testimony to what Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann have done bringing it to life in this medium.
There is a widely held theory.
Mm.
I believe I read this in an esteemed establishment type newspaper. Let's say it's the New York Times. I don't think it was the New York Times. However, they did a study about whether spoilers impacted the enjoyment of a thing.
Mm.
And they literally, like the control group knew nothing, and then the test group were like spoiled for something that they were very much anticipating, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then they were sent to go watch the thing, whatever it was. And the people that knew that a thing was coming largely were able to enjoy it as much as, if not more than the people who didn't know it was coming.
Interesting.
And so that, I think that holds true. I can speak for me. It sounds like it sounds true for you too. It's the journey. It's the unexpected things that they add, the little character moments, the little story beats, the looks, the choices that get us to these moments we know about that really are making it a worthwhile endeavor for me, right? If I felt like it was just a complete retread of the game, I probably would have lost interest. Like, obviously, we'd still be doing this, but I would have less enthusiasm about it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like just the smart things they've done and how we get from A to B, I'm like, man, this is great. Like, we were talking with I'll bring him up again, Bestie Mike, over the weekend.
Hi, Mike.
He was like, so you knew about Sam and Henry? I was like, yep. I didn't know that it's like the game a little bit, but not quite.
Yeah.
And I was like, we spend a little bit more time with them in the game, right? Or I mean, whatever. But I was like, it's not, and that's what actually prompted this. It just made me realize that it's not, me knowing what happens is not having a negative impact on when it occurs and how it occurs, which is really a mark of great storytelling.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I didn't know about that study. That's interesting. Because I've been spoiled for things in the past and it has pissed me off. And then I watch the thing and I'm like, I knew it was happening. I'm mad.
It is all about expectation. It was, so for these people, they knew they were going to be spoiled for something. So they signed up for it, right? It is not an unexpected thing, But I am aware of people. I listen to a lot of other podcasts that are about film and television and stuff like that. And there are people that are on both sides, where there are people that I listen to that don't even watch trailers. They want to go in completely like full media blackout on a film that they're interested in. Then there are people that will like read ahead to be able to like prepare themselves if they know something might like devastate them.
Sure.
And I think it's just about that expectation going in. Like if you were inadvertently spoiled for something, then that your reaction might be anger. But if you're seeking it out just to know like how something ends, I still think the journey might be the more interesting part rather than the destination.
All right. No, that's fair. I think it just really depends on if you are a willful participant in being spoiled.
Right, exactly.
If you have that choice taken from you, it's like not that we're making this is not like a severe issue or something.
He was dead the whole time?
Yeah, like, that's a different story. Anyway, yeah, it just makes things different. So
yeah,
but so the photo booth is called the Star Shot, and the logo is a white bunny. So fans of the game know a particular event in the winter section. Ellie,
we're coming up to the winter section.
We are. Well, we're in the winter section.
I mean, we're coming up to what we would consider the proper winter section, I believe. But hey,
yes, and this is. I mean, it's everywhere. It actually became a meme, so I don't know if this is necessarily spoiling anything. It's not a story spoiling plot point, but anyway, Ellie is hunting, and a white rabbit is involved. So I thought it was interesting that a white bunny / rabbit was the logo for something called the Star Shot. Do with that information what you will.
I mean, I'll just add in, as always, it can't be helped. White Rabbit is always an allusion to Alice in Wonderland, potentially following it to a place. That's all I'll say. Whenever you see a white rabbit, it's never an accident.
Yeah.
Never. It's always referencing Alice in Wonderland in some capacity.
Yeah. Including the game.
Yeah. That's all else. And literally the Matrix, follow the white rabbit.
Yeah.
Done. Right. Yep. It's great. That was a very oblique reference to Alice in Wonderland, but the point stands.
Yeah. And they included that here. So of course we have to talk about that. But paper money being, quote, useless shit is exactly how currency would be in the apocalypse. Absolute useless shit. Yeah. And it's just a reminder, my friends, that it's a slippery fucking slope.
Yeah.
And one of the first things to go would be the collapse of currency.
Sure.
So, I mean, while yes, it is great to prepare yourself and prepare your future. I'm also in camp. There needs to be a balance. Like, this is something I talk a lot about with my best friend, who is very financially conscious, and she uses the word frugal all the time for her. Hey, Brie, but I tell her, I'm like, just have fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, treat yourself every once in a while, because in the very
realistic scenario of the world ending very soon.
Yeah. It would all go to shit and mean absolutely nothing. You'd be burning it to stay warm. That's what you would be doing.
Yeah.
That's what you would be doing, rather. So I like when they incorporate that into these properties, because that's exactly what would happen. Yeah. Like all the people that are like, I'm saving it under my mattress because I don't trust the banks. And it's like, okay, well, even if the banks fall, if society falls, you're going to be burning that to stay warm or wiping your ass. That's it.
That's why you need gold doubloons. Okay. You gotta
put them in a sock. Now we got a weapon.
Right. You whip that sock around and you hit someone in the head. It needs to be like a long, like basketball type sock from the 70s. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the two lines at the
Tube
top.
sock.
Yeah, exactly correct.
You have to let's stay on point here. So yeah, that's just my spiel there. But Ellie and Riley's closeness continues to build, but it's interesting that Ellie breaks off the contact in the beginning when they're in the photo booth together, and then Riley breaks off the contact at the end of this sequence after they conclude the game.
Yes.
young love is very interesting and taxing
What do we
at the same
do?
time.
What do we do?
Yeah, it's that awkward dance of, because in Riley's head, she's probably like, "Oh, she like pushed me away earlier." And in Ellie's head, she's like, "Oh, fuck, I pushed her away earlier and now I want to be closer." So it's a dance. It's a dance, and they pulled that off flawlessly.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is a commentary from the official podcast, the official Last of Us podcast with Troy Baker, Neil Craigman,
Neil Craigman.
Neil Druckmann, and Craig Mazin. I'm not listening to the podcast until we are done season 1, but I saw a clip of it where Craig talked about this is a show about a video game with video game characters on the show playing a video game. So it
Yeah.
was very meta, and I just love that. It brought a little bit of a perspective. It's like a nod
Sure.
to themselves in a way more than anything, but I liked it.
I love that.
Mhm.
I think that's great. We will not get very light, tiny, spoilery thing for The Last of Us Part 2, the game only. You go through a section
Mhm.
where there is I won't even say who or what or where. You just go through a section where there is a PlayStation 3 and a copy of Uncharted, which is a Naughty Dog game. I think it's Uncharted 2 or 3.
Mhm.
And you're like, that's incredible that Naughty Dog took their game and just has it inside of the game. And it's very much reminiscent of that. So very cool. I love it.
It's not just part 2 either. I mean, there's a PlayStation 3 in part 1 with Jack and Daxter and everything else. Like,
I
Mhm.
that part stuck out to me just because of in part 2 specifically because of the fidelity and potentially I had just come off of playing one of the Uncharted games at the time or whatever. And I was just like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So there was also a porny spin on one of Naughty Dog's other games that is just also great. They still might do it. That's all I'll say. I won't say what it is because there's a chance that they might pull that off, and it'll
be great. It will be great. So we're not going to say that. But we're on to the next section, which includes the gift. But Ellie tries to wiggle out of Riley what this gift may be. Is it a spider, a new shirt, a water pistol, a dinosaur?
She's terrible at guessing, by the way.
Absolutely. She's not that Riley would have given it up, but
I know. Yeah.
I mean, a spider, a dinosaur. I have questions, Ellie. But regardless, she's like, I'll be your friend again. But Riley's like, no, listen, you're already my best friend, no matter if you're mad at me or not. But then they approach this macho nacho place, and Ellie's like, is it tacos?
Greatest gift.
Well, yeah, yeah. So they hop the barrier of this taco joint and proceed to the back. And Ellie discovers that this is where Riley has been staying because we see some sleeping bags and food and things like that on the ground. And the final gift is, yes, you guessed it, everyone, no pun intended, Volume 2 by Will Livingston, the book that Ellie has and shares with Joel earlier in the season, or a couple episodes rather. But they exchange a few jokes back and forth here. Just there's a whole lot of laughs in this moment. It's beautiful. It's carefree. That's the word I'm looking for. It's carefree and a way for them to reconnect together after, just everything that they've been talking about. But they get lost at the computer pun, and that was such a delight for pretty much everyone, I would assume, watching the show.
Yeah.
To two people that do not know what a screenshot is. But as Riley reads, Ellie kind of turns around and she finds a bunch of homemade pipe bombs under, a small piece of cloth. And this really just cuts that carefree to zero, essentially. And Riley tells her that she made those and instructs Ellie to put it down. But Ellie's like, is this to kill soldiers? Like, what is going on? But as she's talking, she figures it out. She figures everything out. That the Fireflies posted Riley to this mall and had her prepare these bombs for future attacks and, parts and where they're going to be in the QZ next and so on and so forth. But Riley says that they would never use the pipe bombs on Ellie or even anywhere near Ellie. But Ellie's like, how can you even assure that? Like, you're the one in charge here, that you can tell me that that's what's going to happen or not going to happen.
Mhm.
And Ellie storms off here and hands Riley the pipe bomb, which she actually steps back a little bit as she receives it because it's a fucking bomb.
Right.
But, and Ellie's just kind of like, just not thinking about the severity of the device in her hand, but rather the situation as a whole, which is interesting and goes back to what you talked about with her disconnect from reality
Mhm.
sometimes. Because that continues to come through here. But Riley yells after her, and Ellie pushes back with how this whole night wasn't even about her. And she even tosses a fuck you in there for good measure, because classic Ellie. And Riley reveals here that she is leaving, and this stops Ellie in her tracks. She takes a minute, she breathes deeply, and turns around, and Riley says that she's going to the Atlanta QZ, but she did ask Ellie she did ask if Ellie could join her. And Marlene, who we did name Marlene earlier in this episode, Riley did not,
Mhm.
but it was Marlene, the older woman, the old woman at 40 or 50. Get the fuck out of here. But that was the same lady who helped her join the Fireflies, and Marlene said, no, Ellie cannot go with you. So this is Riley's last night in Boston, and Ellie, goes back to her and asks, why do this? Why bring me here? Why this night, essentially? And Riley says she wanted to see her and she wanted to say goodbye to her because she's leaving, and this is not easy. But Ellie says, no, it is easy. Like, you just said it. And Ellie walks away at that, shoving a trash can violently as she goes. And she walks fast past all the neon signs, past the useless items that mean absolutely nothing. But
Mm.
before we get to the next section. So
Okay.
Ellie mentioning the dinosaur, the water pistol. So I'm going to talk about the significance of the water gun here, but I'm not going to talk about the dinosaurs. I'm going to leave that.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to put that one down.
Put a pin in
So,
it.
yeah, in the game, water pistols, water guns, whatever, they factor in a way that is very video gamey that would not properly translate to the TV show. And that's kind of all I can say there.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spoil you either, Andrew.
Yeah. God.
So, I mean, I don't want to fucking hear it. You could have played it anyway.
I could
So,
have played this at any time over the past
at any time.
9 years.
And yet. So, but I love that they included that it was in a very small way in compared to the game, but I still appreciated that, and I'm sure people who absolutely love the Left Behind love that as well.
Yeah.
So Riley stating to Ellie that this is her last night in Boston took me right back to Henry's conversation with Joel in the tomorrow we start anew vibes conversation,
Mhm.
because it just reaffirms so much loss on this show. Just so much loss. People who are starting over, are moving into this next phase, or are on the next step of their journey in this crazy ass existence, have it snatched away from them
Yeah.
almost instantly. It's like that thing in horror movies, like if someone has sex, they're gonna fucking die like imminently afterwards. Or as soon as someone's like, oh my god, we're safe and we're in the clear, it's like an axe comes along and just off with their head.
Yeah.
It's classic horror shit, but it's done in such a respectful way that the oh my god, the loss of it all. Oh, it's just so fucking sad.
Again, mirroring, a lot of
Mhm.
mirroring.
Yeah.
Any one of these stories is to some greater or lesser degree interchangeable,
Mhm.
which I really like. You can have these stories be wholly disconnected, right?
Sure.
They don't have to, these parallels don't have to exist, but they do.
Mhm.
And that to me is the difference between a show like this and the oftentimes I've heard it a number of times. We've said it on this show, Mike, again, The Walking Dead, right?
Mhm.
I feel like The Walking Dead at its best was still not quite where this show is, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of that has to just do with like disparate moments of loss, right? Or the opposite problem where like everyone's too important. We can't kill anybody now. Right. And
Yeah.
that I dislike that even more where I'm like, people have to die.
Mhm.
Where are the stakes? This, it doesn't feel like it has the opposite problem, but I just feel like this is much more realistic. Like things happen, people
Mhm.
die, right? We, live hard, never give up, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about the pacing of this season, not the individual episodes necessarily, but the pacing of this season, probably more in depth on the episode 9 or like because we're going to do we've talked about this. We're going to do bonus shows for
Just one bonus show.
emails,
Just one.
outreach, messages, but I also want to do a bonus show recapping the entire season, essentially.
Yeah, we'll do overall thoughts.
Yeah.
Our episode 10 will be overall thoughts, and then episode 11 can be reader mailbag.
Yeah, I love it. Reader mail. There you go. Although we have to liken it to something in The Last of Us, and we'll figure that out, guys. We will figure it out.
Sure.
But
The Mycelium Network, of course. Obviously.
done. The Mycelium Network. But yeah. Oh my
Join
God.
us.
That's
Join
the name
us.
of our podcast network. Done.
The Mycelium Network.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh my God. But
one
wonderful.
podcast activates all the other podcasts? I don't understand.
No one does, Andy.
Hmm.
Somebody does. Actually, quick side note, and this is why our podcasts are so long. There was I went to Barnes & Noble the other day, and there was a section called, and I'm going to say it, and you're going to hate it, Andy, but ick. If you know, you know. And it was a picture of The Last of Us, the game, the original artwork for game 1, surprisingly, not even the show or, the remake, whatever. It was the original artwork. And there was a whole bunch of, different series about basically apocalypse because of fungus and this, that, and the other. But on the very bottom of the shelf was a nonfiction book written by a mycologist, and it was called Entangled Life. And I almost bought that one because I thought that I hit my mic so much, but I thought it would be a good idea to read this and maybe do a special episode and maybe even a special series either on this podcast or on Wayfaring Strangers, talking about the real implication and how something like The Last of Us could work, even though all scientists say that it can't. But I would be really interested in that. So if anyone's interested in my interest for that, let us know, because
if you have an interest in my interest.
Yeah. That could be maybe a Patreon exclusive.
Sure.
If we ever end up doing Patreon shows. I don't know. Either way, tloupodcast@gmail.com. Let us know. Last comment before moving on. So there's that deep-seated or deep-rooted fear of abandonment again, and tethers to Joel and Ellie's conversation in the house happening. So, but more so, we're understanding why we are why we're included in this moment of Ellie's life. And as this episode unfolds, it becomes more apparent what she's willing to do for the ones she loves. So, going back to the conversation with Joel and Ellie in the house in Jackson, it all comes down to she has this deep-rooted fear of abandonment because she is an orphan. And I am not an orphan, but I have read many stories that talk of this abandonment, this inherent distrust, because I'm always going to be left behind, essentially. People are always going to leave me. Like, even the people that brought me into this world left me. So how can I trust anyone else, essentially? And while I can't understand that from a relatable point of view, I can empathize with that from like a human standpoint. And it's heartbreaking that she feels this way. And in that moment with Joel, in that conversation, she's fighting to keep him because she wants him to keep her, more importantly.
Yeah.
And with this mirroring with Riley, it's the same thing. Riley is actively choosing to leave her despite how much they care for one another. And in Ellie's mind, it's she cares about me, but she doesn't care about me enough to stay, just like everyone else. And oh God, when you just take everything into account, And then what comes next in the next scene that you're gonna talk about her stopping and turning around. I think that that's Ellie,
Yeah.
and that's the persistence of this character and why she's so beautiful.
She didn't have a choice to let uh when it came to her parents, right?
Mhm.
There was that was a choice that was not given to her, not, wasn't even taken away. It was just literally non-existent, right?
Yeah, and we don't
And
know the circumstances of that yet.
right.
Mhm.
So I think she carries with her the how would you say the no, it's hard to explain. It's hard to put into words. It's like, I'm going to make sure that that choice is never taken away from me again, or that I'm never the one to inflict this type of pain on another person
Mhm.
by doing the leaving, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I mean we should probably just jump into it, right? Like
Mhm.
right here.
Yeah, because we're gonna talk more about it in the next section.
So Ellie storms off. She's running down the hallway. She's basically back in the room or hallway where we saw them drop down through the ceiling. And then she stops and she turns around and she like lets out like a like an
Mhm.
exasperated sigh, and then she starts walking back, right?
Yeah.
Then she hears a scream up ahead and her eyes widen and she picks up the pace, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening closely, you can hear that it is very uniform, the
Mhm.
scream. Like it's very consistent.
Mhm.
She enters a Halloween shop, and it is a grave decoration going off, like like someone coming out of the ground. It was very
Yeah.
ah! Then it right.
Ah!
It was cool. Riley is seated by the counter and whispers, "Surprise! This is the fifth wonder." And she thought, and the one Ellie, she thought Ellie would like the most, so she was saving the best for last. Um, Ellie tells Riley to give her the book. Right? She's like, "Give me the book," ignoring Riley's self-deprecating comments about being stupid and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
She puts the book away in her pack and sits in silence, kind of at a right angle to Riley. Ellie runs through the events, right? As she understands them. Riley leaves. Ellie thinks she's dead, but all of a sudden she's here, gives her this amazing night, but she's leaving to join a cause that she doesn't understand.
Mm.
Riley states for the second time that Ellie doesn't know everything. That having a family to Riley meant something, and she remembers that, and she wants that again, that feeling of belonging, right?
Mhm.
And the Fireflies chose her. So in her mind, she matters. She feels important, right? I
Mhm.
think that's pretty huge. Ellie says that she mattered to her first and that she wants to punch her, which is very Ellie, very Ellie.
Yeah.
Riley is willing to take that punch if it makes her hate her less.
Yeah.
Ellie asks if Riley is sure about this, about leaving, she means. Ellie says that she will miss her best friend. Riley stands at that and says the night isn't over yet. There's one last thing. She dips under the counter that they're kind of leaned up against at this point as we watch Ellie staring stone-faced right ahead, like completely heartbroken.
Mhm.
Riley calls for her and tosses Ellie a wolf mask and then places a clown mask on the counter. She reveals Ellie's Walkman. Ellie calls her out on it. She's like, I said, Riley was like, I was probably most definitely going to give it back, right? Like, I only stole it temporarily. Um, Plugged in, we now hear I Got You, Babe by Etta James. They don their masks, and Riley and Ellie hop up on the counter and they begin to dance to be young teenagers. They are like living in the moment. They're enjoying their lives. It's beautiful. It's like pure happiness. As a quick side note, those
Mhm.
like if you've ever been in a Halloween store that is in a mall, it's probably like a Spirit Halloween. There's
Yeah.
no way they're carrying that caliber of mask. The wolf
No.
mask that Ellie is wearing, easily an $800 mask.
No,
It's
yeah.
like it is literally movie grade, but that's neither here nor there. We can feel Ellie's kind of admiration as she's watching Riley dance, and it's really in the body language because we cannot see her face. Again, this mask
Yeah.
is very good.
Yeah.
Ellie eventually pulls off her wolf mask, and this prompts Riley to do the same. Ellie whispers for Riley not to go. Riley agrees, actually, and says, okay. Ellie goes right in and kisses her after this. Ellie says sorry, and Riley looks at her and asks, for what? They're on the same page, right? It was very clear that these two had more than just friendship affection for each other throughout this episode. It was just nice to see it and see it realized. They laugh in relief and acceptance of one another, which is great. Ellie asks what they're going to do now. Riley says they'll figure it out, but maybe not, because of course we hear the familiar sounds of an infected from somewhere very close. Riley pulls out her gun and tells Ellie to get ready to run. The infected barrels into the Halloween store. Riley fires a few rounds as it lunges and it drops for a moment. They run, pull down metal racks to kind of like block this thing's path, but it's not good enough. It's this is a stalker, we believe, right?
Yeah.
It jumps on them, and Riley gets knocked out for a minute. She gets like pushed and hit into a thing, gets knocked out. Ellie stabs this stalker in the side many times, and to very little effect. But it pins her, tries to bite her. Tendrils coming out of its mouth. Always look at the mouth; it's disgusting.
Yeah.
She fights it off, and they go down beneath a rack of masks and stuff. Riley stands, takes a swing at it with a bat, saving Ellie. It attacks Riley next, but Ellie stands and stabs this thing in the head. Ellie celebrates for a moment, like, we did it! We did it! And then, holy shit, it is short-lived because Riley is looking at Ellie, serious, somber. Ellie looks and sees this bite on her forearm that begins bleeding, like almost immediately. She screams no. It's very guttural, right? Like a very, very emotional scene. And then she looks up to see Riley was bitten on her hand as well. They stare at each other in silence as some very classic Tilu music begins to play.
It's a lot. A lot happened in that. But going to the beginning, so we talked about this. Ellie doesn't abandon people.
Right.
Not doesn't want to. She doesn't abandon people, which is why she turned back. So that everyone may have died or left her, but she does not walk away from anyone. And she fights back. And it's this continuation of the strength, and I'm gonna use a very dramatic word, but the fortitude of her character. And it shows so perfectly in this episode from start to finish in a multitude of ways. And we've been talking about Bella Ramsey off and on, but to just kind of get into that real quick, I mean, when Bella was cast, I was very excited about it, because I remember the distinct moments she had at a very young age on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
She was 11 doing some of, I mean, when the series ended, she wasn't 11, but she had a moment that was just so visceral for someone so fucking young. And I was like, oh, we're good. Like, she's going to be Ellie. We're good.
Everyone's like, I'd watch the show with her. I'd watch the show about her.
Yeah. I mean, she's this, excuse me. I know for Bella Ramsey, any pronouns work. But I want to be mindful and use, just kind of go between them. But they're very expressive in ways that are almost cyclical, if that makes sense, because I'm going to talk about things that she did in episode 1 that she literally does again in this episode.
Yeah.
And but before we get to that, so Bella, just Jesus, this episode was 100% yours.
Praise hands.
Yes, praise hands. Needle drop number 4. I Got You Babe by Etta James. I wrote Etta James. Which, by the way, the tapes that were in Ellie's bedroom was Etta James and Aha. And I couldn't make out the middle one. I'm assuming it was Pearl Jam. But
I think it was Pearl Jam, yeah.
Yeah. But it was good that we got all of the songs that we saw the music cassette
tapes
for.
It's the 60s. Whatever that's worth.
60s was no stock, I think.
Interesting.
70s was new stock. 80s was trouble.
There you go.
Yeah. So what do with that information what you will, V2. But yes, the lyrics to this song, again, chosen for a reason.
Mhm.
But it's also from the DLC, FYI. Um, but it's all about having someone. And to Ellie, having someone is important. Being halved by someone is important. Like
Yeah.
a- and just like Riley, we all want to belong and matter, and so does Ellie. So the fact that she agreed, what could have been. That's all I'm saying.
So many times in this world, in this story, what could have been.
Truly, I know it's so fucking sad. Every time Ellie, this is a little funny note. Every time Ellie says no to Riley, we know that she don't mean it.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time she's like no, and then does the thing anyway. And I wonder if this doesn't like this experience and maybe her relationship as a whole with Riley, the things that we didn't even see. I wonder if it hardened her a little bit to some situations with Joel and others that we will meet along the way.
Hmm.
Because the no and the pushback that she gives with Riley is a lot less severe to what we've seen her do with Joel. And now, of course, that could just be because she doesn't know him. Fuck this guy, that kind of stuff in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it does make me wonder if it's like, I should have just said no and fucking stuck to no, because then my best friend would be alive even if she wasn't with me. I wouldn't be infected. All of these things because she said yes happened.
Yeah. It's a kind of an interesting way I don't know if she necessarily thinks that, but it is an interesting thought exercise you've presented.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I know what that's applicable to our own lives with if I had said no or if I had said yes, would I be in a different situation? Would I be with a different person? Would I be living in a different state? Would I have a different career? We can fall down that rabbit hole.
The multiverse. I don't.
Um,
We're too many multiverses now.
Yeah.
I like the universe, the single verse, the monoverse.
Yeah. But it's just it came to mind and I wanted to ask it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The same energy, and this is going back to what I was talking about with Bella Ramsey's acting. The same energy Ellie used with "Don't Go" to Riley was the exact same tone and almost identical delivery that she gave to Marlene when she said, "Why won't you let me go home?" And I don't know if this was 100% a conscious choice or if Bella is just so in tune with her craft of being an actor
Mm-hmm.
and this character specifically that she did that. But it was almost, I had my own flashback, Andrew, of when she said don't go to
In my
Riley.
head, yeah.
Yeah. Stunning. It was just stunning. It's a meme. If you don't get it, that's your problem.
Yeah, that's fine. It was good. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have something that I want to present about the timeline of events, but we can talk about that towards like after we finish the episode because I have a question, but I think I have figured it out. But yeah, it's great.
All right. Don't forget, because I might. So the infected. I want to discuss these. This was a little different from the DLC. DLC was a group of runners, and in the show it was one stalker, presumably a stalker. So the idea of this mycelium network, the lore behind it that they've established in the show, initially that came up in my head. I was like, well, how would it be one and how would others not come running? But this is easily explained away because the mall is a fortified bunker from the
Mhm.
outside,
Yeah.
so no one can get in. So that, we can strike that off and just be like, that explains that away, why no others came and why the threat wasn't as great as what we've seen with like Joel and Ellie and Tess at that point. The second point is having it be a stalker. So people who don't play the games, the levels of infected, we have runner, stalker, clicker, bloater, shambler. Or shambler, bloater. Excuse me, I reversed them. Bloater's the big baddie we've already seen. Stalkers still have their eyesight, can still hear to a degree,
Mhm.
And they literally do what they are named after. They fucking stalk you. In my opinion, they are the scariest infected of the games because they will literally just hide behind things and watch you and then choose to attack you or not to attack you.
Right.
So the creepiness factor of including the one stalker was taken to like a 10.
Right.
However, for me personally, I thought it was a little like, I'm not knocking the makeup or the acting, nothing. Traditional stalkers are extremely thin, very wiry.
Mhm.
Like, just, I mean, like, the infected always looks sick, but this dude looked like jacked. Like, he was thick still. And I was like, I'm not getting the same creepy delivery
Uh-huh.
from this as you would in the games. And I know it's hard. I need to stop fucking comparing. I
Yes.
know.
Yes.
But
God.
so on one hand, it could have been potentially scarier than what was in the DLC, but from the practical application of it and the specific actor that was used, I thought it took away a little bit for me.
You know, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you don't have a skin in the game because you haven't played the DLC. But
That's right. So I thought it worked, you know. Yeah, I have nothing to add there. It worked for me.
Yeah. I don't want to one of the emails talked about how we keep it real on this show and we're not all just like everything is great, everything's wonderful, everything is perfect. That's not what this
We
show
keep
is.
it real.
We're trying to we talk about the things that we love. We also talk about the things we don't love that much because
Which is rare. It's actually pretty rare.
It is rare.
For me. For you, every episode you're like, well, this isn't like the game at all.
No,
I hate this so much.
Stop it.
I'm just playing.
No, I honestly, this was the only note that I had for this whole episode. Literally, the only note, not even a negative note, just a note.
So you were like this. You were like, no notes. Well, okay, one note, but after that, no notes.
Yeah, yeah, just one. I don't think that's bad. Anyway,
sure.
So Ellie and Riley's bites. All right, so 2 notes. So, but this also this involves the infected, so it's still kind of one note. So, in no scene or of the attack were the bites visible. And I understand that the show needed to hide the reveal until the literal last second for the payoff for people who didn't know.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that I loved that. I know that there was one sequence where Ellie and the infected are thrown under a rack and you can't see either one of them.
Right.
And that could have been where that happened. Maybe when the clicker or the stalker jumped on them at first, that's where Riley got bit. I don't know. But I just thought it was weird because they emphasize so many details. And I know that they're probably just going for this is so fast, no one's going to be paying attention to it. It happened regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true. But I don't know. If you play back the scene slowly, you just can't see his mouth anywhere near Riley's hand or her forearm.
Look, we weren't there.
We weren't. You're right.
We weren't there. But the damage is done.
It is.
To my heart and to our protagonists.
Yeah. And to the audience, really.
Yeah.
So, okay. So enough of that. So from there, so we see Joel again, shivering and shaking as he lies on his back still, and he is alone. But we're back to the beginning of the episode, and we see Ellie hesitating as she listens to Joel's breathing from down below. And then she pushes through and into the house. She tears up the stairs and into the bathroom, rips the drawers and cabinets and medicine cabinets, everything apart in search of anything, something that will help in this situation. And then she goes back down and she's in the kitchen. She's continuing this just haphazard search. And she pulls on a drawer and it sticks and she just fucking screams at the thing. And this triggers her to go back into that flashback to presumably Spirit Halloween. What else could it be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Giving all of her fury to the glass countertops that her and Riley were only recently dancing upon. She is smashing them, screaming. She's going one by one. And as this is happening, Riley is sitting quietly on the floor just listening to everything.
Mhm.
And then Ellie stops and there's a brief lull and she says to Ellie, there's more stuff for you to break elsewhere, on the other side if you
Yeah.
need it. And she's very quiet here. But Ellie asks here what they're going to do. And this is, again, a much different tone, a much different delivery to the question that she asked about their future literally only moments ago.
Mhm.
And Riley, who's holding her sidearm here, says we have two options. One, we take the easy way out. It's quick, painless. She's like, no, I don't like option one. Two, we just keep going. And Ellie says, it's over. But Riley's like, it will be, but not yet. And she says that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the end inevitably comes for all of us, but some of us just get there faster than others.
Mhm.
We don't quit. Whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, we don't give that up. And we could just be all poetic and shit and lose our minds together. And this is an iconic line from the game. A lot of this is pulled from the game, but that line in specifically is just perfect. And they're crying, but they hold on to one another now. And Ellie asks about an option 3, and Riley just says sorry to her over and over again because there is no option 3. Not for Riley, at least.
Right.
And Ellie leans down, and they embrace, really holding on to one another now, whether it's for 2 minutes or 2 days, who's to know. But we go back to present day Ellie,
Mhm.
and the drawer finally gives, and it crashes down onto the floor. A spool of thread and a needle attached to it falls out, and she rushes over to get it. She inspects it, and then she immediately runs for the basement door. But before we move on.
Okay.
So I neglected to mention this, and I know, again, I've been talking about Bella Ramsey's acting this entire episode, but when she screams that guttural no,
Yeah.
that was the moment. If that was her audition, Andrew, that was all she needed.
Just one word.
Oh my, it was so, that has to be my favorite acting moment from Bella Ramsey. And I thought it was going to be like this series of no's, these like just one guttural cry after the next, but she did so much in no before she looks up and sees Riley was bitten, and then she just heartbreak.
Yeah.
To transition that fast from rage to heartbreak. Jesus Christ. Like I can't, it was hats off to you. Okay. So
That's it.
but this brief flashback to the present day before going back to the past again is jarring, and rightfully so. This is exactly why they did it. But it shows that Ellie is activated again. And if we go back to episode 1, you remember that Craig said this when Joel defended her and beat the shit out of that guard to save her life. So again, it's these tendrils of her past.
Hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah, you did. That connect us to the present day with Joel, but they're reinforcing everything so deeply that, again, not to be dramatic, but I'm a Leo, it takes my breath away to an extent. It really does.
Yes.
You are hard pressed to find consistency in a TV show like this beyond Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and now The Last of Us.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking top tier prestige drama. It is elsewhere. You may not be interested in it. Okay. You may not be interested in it, but it does exist. Okay?
I know it does.
Same with me. I may not be interested in it even, right? I'm sure that Succession is a great show. I probably won't watch it, but hey, I'm sure it's wonderful.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say more.
No,
I was writing something. Sorry.
No, I saw you. That's really all I have. I saw you. I was like in the middle, and I see you like reach for your phone. You know, this fucking guy. Right,
no, I was reaching for a fucking pen.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I write stuff down.
I understand. Anyway. I'm just trolling, but yes, of course, it's wonderful. The acting here is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why we would have expected anything less.
Well, we're talking. We weren't talking about acting. We were talking about how everything is reinforcing everything that's come before.
Oh yeah, but also that dovetailed from Bella Ramsey.
Oh, the acting
going
from
this being not really, but potentially her audition, and yes, of course.
Yeah. Agree. But Ellie's line from the game of "They took the easy way out" is mirrored here by Riley. So, in The Last of Us Part 1, there's a moment where Ellie sees something and just like she sees something with Joel. It's just dead, just two dead bodies,
Right.
skeletons. And she sees them in a bathtub and she's standing there with Joel and she's like, "Oh, so they took the easy way out." And Joel's basically like, "That's not the easy way out."
Yeah, there's nothing easy about
There's
that, or
yeah,
some. He says something very, a very astute observation about that. Yeah,
exactly. But we can see, like, we hear Riley say that this would be the easy way out, killing ourselves. Um, but it's that link to the belief that, if you get bitten or left alone or you are running out of food or this, that, or the other, and you feel you have no options, that to kill yourself is the easy way out, which of course is not true at all.
mm,
But she doesn't have that belief altered until that moment with Joel in the game.
yeah,
And it hasn't happened with Joel in the show, and maybe it won't. But I'm sure she learns eventually, like, no, that is not the easy way out.
hmm
But I just wanted to kind of call back to that because it was a moment of dialogue, a line of dialogue that relates.
very good.
So the lashing out, Ellie lashing out versus Riley's quiet submission to an inevitable end. It's just like Joel. We see the exact same situations being mirrored here. Joel is likely thinking that he's dying. He's quietly laying on the floor, can't do anything about it. Really probably doesn't want to do anything about it because he just told this girl that is his reason to fight to leave him,
Yeah,
and she leaves, so he's thinking, "Oh, that's
mission
it."
accomplished.
Yeah. But then you have Ellie tearing apart the house, screaming at inanimate objects, just lashing out because that is her response to trauma. And I know that, again, the official podcast talked about Riley's history of loss. She lost the 2 people that were the closest to her, her parents. So now that she knows her end is near, she's accepted it because she's had to accept these great amounts of loss in the past.
hmm
In the past, Ellie, while she has probably had people come and go from her life, Riley is going to be the first thing that she loses to that extent. I
Exactly.
I would assume.
Yeah.
But now it's both of them, and she's angry, and that's how Ellie responds to trauma versus how Riley does. And then we see that again with Joel and Ellie, and it's these parallels, it's these mirror dimensions that are just situations repeating themselves in Ellie's life, and I can't even imagine what that must have been like for her as she's trying to find just a fucking spool of thread, something, and
Yeah.
go from there.
And I think the difference being is that for Ellie, there in the flashback, there is a resignation because it's just understood that when you're bit, it's over.
Mhm.
But with Joel, activated is a good word. A fire is lit, something to say like, no, this is a fixable problem potentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I mean, maybe she had some sort of first aid. She knew enough to like, we have to close the wounds, right? So maybe she
Mhm.
learned something in Fedra school to, in along the lines of first aid. And so the reaction to the initial reaction to the problem is the same, like just a full throated yell, like, God damn it, right?
Mhm.
Anger. But then what happens with Riley is a resignation, but what happens with Joel is determination. That
Yeah.
is, there was no answer to the first problem. We understand this, but there
Yeah.
is one here, and
Mhm.
she's going to do everything she can, which I think is a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. I agree. I do agree. And now we're on to the final section.
Here we go. She rushes back down to Joel and she pulls the leather coat off of him. And he is, we see the tears still. He's upset. He's probably in quite a bit of pain as well.
Mhm.
Ellie holds his hand as he breathes, as his breaths, right? He's breathing deeply. It's labored, but he's silent, right? He's not given hollering like we all would be probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's an affirmation that you don't leave me, I don't leave you, right? Like we're simpatico.
Yeah.
At first he doesn't squeeze her hand, but eventually he does. And this is just a signal, latent or not, like I'm willing to fight if you are, right? It seems like you're willing to fight, so God damn it, I am too. She moves the hand holding his wound out of the way, uncovers it, and takes a moment to undo the needle and thread. She dabs at the open hole as he looks up.
Oh.
And he's like, basically the look that it's exchanged, no words, is like, this is going to hurt like hell, right?
Yeah.
And he like gives, like a little nod or whatever. And she starts stitching, right? And he groans in pain and he grips her shoulder pretty hard. And he's essentially on the verge of like passing out, which I imagine would be true. She continues. Joel looks away. He's turning away. She goes back and forth between looking at him and stitching. There's a severity, I guess we could say, in her eyes, like a determination, right? I think that might be the word of this episode to describe Ellie. I think at this point Joel is passed out, but she continues the work. She's like, singular focus. Let me fix what I can fix.
Yeah,
and that's how episode 7 ends.
Yeah, it's harrowing. That's a word.
Right. It starts and ends harrowing.
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Yeah. I just want to talk briefly about, before we get to the notes, about Joel's wound here. We talked about this on Wayfaring Strangers. I watched a medical surgeon basically break down. So in the game, I know I didn't go into many details, but in the game, Joel fell into a piece of rebar and it went through and through him.
From a height.
From a height. A significant height. So he fell on that fucking fast. And I needed to know, I'm like, I don't want to just chalk this up to video game ass shit. How could someone survive this in a world without like perfectly functioning hospitals and doctors on standby in the event of a medical emergency like this? So basically the human body is incredible. It truly is. It truly is. If you're watching, look at my pen right here. That is what the blunt end of a rebar would look like. Just flat, round surface.
Yes.
What this doctor basically said is when that bar punched through his body and came
in essentially the same spot, we should add, right? Like right on the lower side.
Same spot, but still in the abdomen area where your small intestine is.
Yes.
So basically what your organs will do with a blunt object going through your body, regardless of the rate of speed, is your organs will move out of the way.
They're like, oh shit!
Yes, basically. Like, it's squishy and gross, but they will move out of the way. And that is why he survived. Because if he had a pierced bowel, that would have bled, just all of the toxins from your bowel would have bled into his gut, and he would have died. Regardless of how many antibiotics he had, he would have fucking died.
Sure.
So that's how they can explain that away in The Last of Us Part 1. My concern with the show,
here we go,
is that they used a sharp object. Right. And the surgeon basically said, if you use a sharp object, that will tear right through anything. Your organs can't move out of the way because it's a sharp object. Like, make it make sense. It makes sense. So,
okay,
I'm concerned.
Concernicus?
I'm concerned. And that's all I'm going to say.
All right. I mean, look, it wasn't a through and through like we had just discussed. It was just a stab, right? So we've seen people survive this before. It's painful. It's a thing. I hope it never happens to me. I would not love to be a survivor of it. I mean, I'd love to survive it if it did happen, but ideally I just never get stabbed. So yeah, that's, there's a little bit more the circumstances of how his injury occurred in the game versus this. Reality suggests this to be just a little bit more plausible, right? I mean, you could argue either way with that. Falling into debris, let's say, there's a good chance you might fall into rebar, right? That's a real thing that could happen.
Yeah.
But this just being attacked and stabbed with whatever instrument was available to the person who stabbed you, which feels very realistic to me. It's not like the guy had like a pristine machete or knife. It was like this thing that I just still happen to be holding in my hand.
Sure.
I like that. I thought I like both. But I do agree with you that like this seems like a more serious situation.
Yeah.
The only thing that sucked about the rebar is that, again, mild spoilers, is that he had to be removed from the rebar as well, which hurts like a bitch in the opposite direction. So
yeah. Okay, so moving to the comments, last couple comments before the end of the show. So this moment between Joel and Allie. Who's Allie?
Allie McBeal. I don't know why I said that.
I don't either. But this moment between Joel and Ellie was more powerful, I said, than the conversation in last week's episode by Leaps and Bounds. So the choice to keep Joel conscious, alert, and awake in the show, whereas in the game, Joel is unconscious when she gets him into the house. It made an enormous difference here. And I loved that choice. However, it concerns me for things in the future, story-wise.
Okay.
The impact of things in the future, story-wise. But I can't spoil, so I'm gonna shut up.
You just have so much concern for the future. It's always it's
know.
so nice of you to be so concerned about the future,
Yes.
And yet here we are in the present.
Isn't that amazing?
A gift.
Yeah. Yeah, it is truly a gift. But so the hand holding. So this is a parallel, yes, but it's contextually different. In this instance, so with Riley and Ellie, it was literally clinging to the last moments of life together. In this moment with Joel, it's a promise. So Ellie is promising, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you. And I think to go back again to last week's episode, everybody that Joel has either cared for, everybody that Joel has cared for has either died or left him. Everybody. And I tweeted this with this sequence of Joel looking at her, the hand with the fingers not holding on, and then the hand with the fingers holding on. Somebody did a tweet. I retweeted it with this comment. And I'm like, everyone talks about Ellie's proclamation of, everyone leaves me, but everyone fucking leaves Joel too. And in this moment, like, he's still a human being, and this person agrees to stay with him just like he agreed to stay with her. Even though, again, it might be 2 minutes, it might be 2 days.
Right.
She's not leaving.
Yeah.
And I really hope that the people who have played the games and for one reason or another, and I literally don't understand, but for one reason or another dislike Joel, I hope that this helps you see more of who this character is and always has been from the start. Just because he doesn't vocalize these things or vocalize well at all doesn't mean that he doesn't feel them or share that with her in the ways that he knows how to, by staying, by following her, by taking her where she needs to go, by bringing her home, like whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just, that's who this character is. And that is why he will always be my favorite. And I love that they gave him that moment in this show.
Yeah. I will say, just in keeping with this, and because this is a series and a episode in particular full of mirrors and parallels, think back to Sarah's death and the location of the wound and how that was handled. And think about this and the role reversal that we are experiencing here. Just an interesting thing to keep in mind. A lot of blood in the gut area. Not a lot of words spoken by the person who was injured. And a similar level of wanting to be helpful and determination, and how that that ends up. I just
Yeah.
thought that was like really. I was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
this show,
This show.
you bastards,
For real.
making me relive past trauma. You bastards.
But wonderful bastards.
Yeah.
And the last talking point for this episode, Ellie's expression at the end as she was stitching Joel up, full on identical to what we glimpsed at the end of episode 1 when she was, quote, activated.
Yeah.
The same draw that she felt for someone protecting her is the same amount of determination and effort she's putting into saving him.
Yeah.
And the fact that she is a 14-year-old kid, I can't believe, like, the amount of trauma that this kid has suffered, sustained, and experienced, and continues to experience, and will continue to experience,
What?
is criminal, really. It makes my heart break. Like, our daughter is gonna be 14 years old in 15 days, and I can't imagine her going through any one of these events, let alone something like this.
Yeah.
And
In the
having to
series
go
of
through
just a
that.
few weeks and months, you know.
Yeah. It's too much, but it is executed flawlessly,
Mhm.
and I love that mirror sequence of slipping back into that mode.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And that is the end of our episode 7 breakdown of Left Behind. So, quick.
Wait a minute. Before we do that, I want to ask a question about the timeline
Oh yeah,
here.
the timeline.
So,
So,
when we meet Ellie in episode 1,
mhm.
or maybe they're talking about it in episode 2. Regardless, how long did Ellie say that the Fireflies had her? Was it 2 weeks? Like, chained to the radiator. She said a specific amount of time.
She did. I don't
It was
remember.
either 2 or 3 weeks, right? My thought about this is that Left Behind, when we leave Ellie and Riley, you know, Riley was scheduled to leave the following morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Marlene probably showed up to take her where she needed to go, or somebody did, right?
Yeah.
And maybe Riley had already turned at that point, but Ellie was still fine. And this is how Ellie and Marlene meet. Marlene sees that this is apparently it has no effect thus far, right? Like, you know, even after a few hours, you would start to see the little, effects around a bite, right?
Mm-hmm.
This also tracks because of the pipe bombs that were mentioned in the first episode where, you know, she points to the map. She's like, where have we been bombing? Right.
Yeah.
So those were probably the pipe bombs that Riley was making that we saw, right?
Yeah.
There were probably 8 of them, 6, maybe 6, 8, something like that. So I think that is the fortuitous meeting of Marlene and Ellie here. And
I just went back to our notes and I didn't see a timeline written down. I don't know if they say it.
I feel like it might have been in the second episode when she's talking with Joel and Tess.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like she had maybe when they were.
It was 3 weeks. We know that much.
Yeah. So I mean, literally these, you know, like when she meets Joel and Tess 3 weeks ago is when she lost Riley, right?
When she got infected and lost Riley.
Yeah. So that's the timeline that we're dealing with here, I think.
Yeah.
I just
how
wanted to see.
long was she in the mall?
Yeah.
With Riley, yeah.
Well, that is still that's still kind of the question, right? But we're talking like maybe 2 days max, right? So maybe the following day Riley didn't show up for her deployment, right? And assuming she was supposed to bring these bombs along for a very important mission for the Fireflies.
Yeah.
And then Marlene decided to come to the mall.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's how they meet. That's how they, you know, I wanted to run that by you to see if you thought that was like plausible.
Oh, absolutely. I think just what you said. They're expecting Riley to report to leave to go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And she doesn't show up. So whether it's Marlene or somebody else that she dispatches to go.
Mhm.
But I feel like if anybody else went, they might have killed Ellie.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be
It
Marlene
has
for
to
this
be
to work.
Marlene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
And because Marlene was the person who enlisted Riley, right? She would be the familiar face that Riley knows as a Firefly.
But Ellie didn't seem to recognize Marlene at all when she first meets her.
Oh, that's right.
So I don't think. Yeah,
Damn it.
I know. Maybe, I mean,
Well, maybe
maybe
she showed
yeah.
up. I mean, she wouldn't have recognized Marlene. Even as the person who, I mean, she wouldn't have recognized, like, Riley's gone. We assume Riley's gone. Marlene
Yeah.
shows up and captures Ellie. So she only knows Marlene as the person who captured me and locked me to this radiator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I'm saying when Marlene walks in the room, Ellie is seeing her for the first time. That's the impression I got. Unless they literally just like put a bag over her head and just kidnapped her and took her back.
Yeah, it might have been a force of fireflies. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But I was like, those bombs line up with the bomb. We saw a bomb go off in episode 1. We learned that there were other bombings. So those were clearly that, like, it's all, again, with the consistency and the timeline. I'm sure they just mapped it out linearly and they were like, how can we just kind of cut these things so they slot in different ways but still work? And
absolutely.
I was like, oh my God.
No, that's good. I didn't even think of that. I would like to hear people's thoughts on that. If anybody has anything to add.
Let me know.
TV versus game spoilers. So if you guys do not want to hear this, just jump ahead. Maybe about like 3-ish minutes. This isn't too long. But we talked a lot. We talked a lot about things going. Let me start over. We talked a lot about things along the way with this episode in particular, but basically the entire section of Ellie and Riley was the DLC minus a few things that they could not include because video games and TV shows don't always and cannot always be a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So some things were left out. We don't have to talk about those. A lot of things were included. All of the important things, for the most part, were included. And what we saw was what we needed to see. And this whole section was done a little bit differently, again, to the game, given the release dates and when the DLC dropped, etc. But it was still interesting to see it in live action.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
And get more of that history with Ellie and particularly influence that Riley had on her. The music, we've talked about music this whole episode, specifically Take On Me and Pearl Jam as a whole are very intrinsic to The Last of Us, more so in part 2 than part 1. But it makes me question the significance of what they will play in the future. Excuse me, considering they've already played these songs now. One of them in particular.
All right, we'll see. We'll see. One may be let's just say like a reimagining maybe of
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that, but will it lessen the impact? Who knows? Well, I guess we'll find out. So this is the biggest topic for me right now, and I'm going to try and keep it short, but the pacing, not of the episodes. I want to make that very clear. When we are watching an episode, when I'm watching an episode, because I can't speak for anyone else but myself, but when I'm watching an episode, I'm in it. It feels very well paced. The events are executed wonderfully. Do I have talking points and notes sometimes? Absolutely. Whatever. However, the season as a whole, I think the pacing is starting to suffer because game 1 is supposed to be season 1 and game 2 is supposed to take place over seasons 2 and 3. Now, game 2 is twice the length of game 1, so I understand that.
Yeah.
However, I feel like season 1 would have benefited from being split into 2 seasons or at least 12 to 13 episodes, because the rate of speed with which we meet people and lose people and travel across the country and experience all of these harrowing events and mirror this, that, and the other and parallel future events and so on and so forth, It's breakneck speed, Andrew. It is absolute breakneck fucking speed. There is something to be said to say they put their foot on the pedal. They have not let up on the gas since.
Yes.
There's also there's a drawback to that too of going too fast constantly.
Unbelievable.
But the weird thing with this is, on one hand, I feel like things are going too fast, and on the other hand, I feel like things are going too slow. And I've been talking about this off air, and I think I talked about it maybe once on our podcast, and I can't remember which episode, but I I think I talked about how it took 6 episodes to get from Boston to Jackson.
Mhm.
And now we have 3 episodes left for the rest of the game. And that seems like it went so fast, but it took so long to get there. So the pacing is uh, in some ways suffering a bit for um for the whole season.
I get it. You hate the all killer, no filler approach.
No, no, because you can kind of look at this past episode a little bit as filler. And that's kind of like, listen, I love the DLC. It came 8 months after the game released. I had to math real quick.
I had
Sorry,
to
guys.
math it. Son of a
Um,
bitch.
But while I absolutely believe that it is a good DLC game wise and an excellent story to tell to show more of Ellie's history,
Mhm.
I don't know if including it into one season that has to cover an entire game was a smart idea without extending the season, because the game did not have this story of Ellie and Riley, and it was an amazing game without it, and we got to know Ellie just as well without it. And then they released this 3.5 hour DLC, and it gave so much more to Ellie, and I loved it. I mean, I love the combat sequences, the game sequences of it.
Mm.
But if they're going to incorporate that into season 1 without extending season 1, I think we're gonna lose something, and I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, one, we don't know what the run times of the final episodes are, as far as I know.
Episode 9 is 46 minutes.
That's perfect. Perfect runtime. Uh, okay. I mean,
Mhm.
fair point. I will
Yeah.
wait until the end. I don't know.
Same.
I
Again,
don't.
they could save it, and I'll be like, I was wrong. Forget me.
It feels like a Herculean task to have what we're going to have on the next episode
Mhm.
happen, and then in one more episode tie things up.
Yep.
According to how the game, like the end of game 1.
Mhm.
My thought is that it's not going to happen. I think we'll get to a point and they have season 2. And again, I have a proven track record of being wrong about my predictions of how the show is going to be structured or go. I simply just don't see, if next episode is dedicated to what I believe it is in the game, winter, then there are moments that truly matter, in my estimation, emotional moments that we will not get in spring. Yeah. So I mean, I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the ride. I love this episode. Did feel like letting off the gas a little bit, which is good, because we can't always be just like in a complete harrowing amount of danger and feeling tense the whole time, right?
Yeah.
The show certainly knows the balance, right? That's why we get the Bill and Frank episode, right? It's just like a really nice, beautiful story in the middle.
Yeah.
So,
and even that, in essence, even though that is still my favorite episode, episode 3 is still my favorite episode, I do wonder if the time that was invested in that took away
unbelievable. I can't believe you.
from no, I will
Take it
never
back.
I don't
I'm playing with you. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Has it been confirmed that season 1, like, has Craig Mazin said
Yes.
season 1 is game 1?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
So has Neil.
Okay, then it is literally, if that's the case, this is news to me. Because again, I don't go in completely unsullied, but I try to limit my intake of what I'm about to see. I cannot wait to be proven wrong, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
I can't wait for us to be proven wrong and they wrap it up and you're like, holy shit, these sons of bitches did it again.
Yeah. I want to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I think people have a misconception about me that I'm just like, I have, I strong opinion, strongly held. But I have no problem, quote unquote, eating crow or being like, I was wrong. You know that about me. I have no problem apologizing or saying whatever. Like that's, maybe that's a surprise to some people, whatever. But like,
it might be a surprise to somebody.
But all that to say, yes, I'm willing to. I'm on this ride. Of course, I'm going to continue this ride. We're going to continue this ride. But I just wanted to talk about that because it hit me, and I thought that it was important to keep shit real on this show.
Keep it real.
The show rating that Andrew, it doesn't exist for Andrew. For me, this episode was 7.5, 7.5 out of 10.
So rude to Riley. How dare you besmirch her memory like this?
No, I'll give it an 8.
All right.
You're right. Better. I'll give it an 8. But yeah, I just, and it all it is where you're coming from. I've heard people I know, the DLC is their favorite Last of Us content, not game 1, not game 2. The DLC, and I think that's just absolutely fascinating and wonderful, and I would love to get them on the show now that I'm thinking about it. But beyond that, I've had those same people either loved this episode or fucking hated it, which is it goes both ways. So for me, I'm just gonna sit there with an 8 because I really enjoyed the Left Behind DLC.
Okay,
but it's not my favorite part of The Last of Us.
Fair enough.
Some contact information before I turn the rest of the show over to Andrew.
Yeah.
So Instagram, if you'd like to follow along with us, we are over at TLOU Podcasts. Twitter, we are at TLOU Podcast. Our YouTube, just go and search TLOU Podcast and you will find us. Our Wayfaring Strangers podcast as well, where we cover the games in depth, just as we do on this show. If you're interested in that or listening to more of our shenanigans, please go over there and check us out. Subscribe, rate, review, listen, all that good stuff. We have a merch. We finally have merch for the last cast.
What?
On Bonfire. So if you go to bonfire.com and search TLOU Podcast, you will find all of our good stuff. Pick yourself up a sweatshirt. Andrew and I are ordering some stuff and we'll be wearing that soon on our shows. And I look forward to that very much. We have a website, tloupodcast.com. Go over and check that out. Don't forget about the giveaway. FYI, I meant to mention that at the end of our episode last week and I forgot. I apologize. But we announced the giveaway at the start of the episode and then I never said anything about it, which is kind of weird. But yes, the giveaway is live. It goes until March 13th. All you have to do is go over onto Twitter. Again, it's twitter.com/TLOU podcast. It's a pinned tweet. Go check it out. Put your name in to enter the Sideshow Joel, a digital copy of The Last of Us, or a PlayStation gift card of equivalent value, and some merch from yours truly. If you'd like to follow me everywhere, I'm at Jaded Vader. Everywhere for Andrew is Dark Driving. And that is all I got.
Hey, everyone. It's your old pal, Andrew.
75-year-old pal, Andrew.
We kept it short this week at just 2 hours and 51 minutes.
It was not me this week, though.
Rather than our normal runtime of 3:20, 3:30 sometimes. If you've made it this far, clearly you are a fan of The Last of Us. Clearly. I implore you, if it strikes your fancy, to go ahead and just leave us a star rating. And if you're feeling really spicy, write a few words about us. You could go and just write, nicely done. You could do what Kara B did and, explain why we are in some regards better than their friends in that they love it here. They love talking with us or listening to us. So do that. That's really all I got. I want to keep it short and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
On whatever platform you listen, most of them have star ratings: Amazon, Google, iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. And then on Apple Podcasts, specifically, if you are listening there and you want to leave a little written review, obviously we take the time to read them here. We love to see that stuff. It's great. Thank you to everybody who's reviewed so far. It's just like a nice free way to help the show. And we appreciate it.
Very much.
That's it. We're done.
No.
I'm going to take us out.
Yes, you are.
I'm going to play us out.
Do it live.
I'm going to do it. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Until we're chasing the ghosts of our pasts while stalling the reapers at the door again next time. This is where we thread the needle and dream of future days. Many references to future things in that one. Astute listeners.
Shush. Shush!
I just want to talk briefly from the
for the mafia that's listening. Yes. Oh my gosh, you guys! Thank you so much for just holy shit. Our downloads just continue to explode, and my God, we've never had so many in a 30-day period. I am just blown away. So thank you.
We did it.
We'll be back next week with the episode 8 review. I am so looking forward to episode 8. Troy Baker. OG Joel Miller is coming on the show. Very excited. Let's
We're gonna see.
go.
We're gonna see what happens.
Yeah, we are. Oh God. Oh no. All right, I'm leaving. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to The Last Cast, HBO's unofficial
Off to a great start.
I know. I saw your face seconds before I started recording, and you were like, "Yee!"
Well,
I know, it's wonderful. All right. Okay.
Unbelievable.
This is not great. I have the giggles. All right.
The professionalism.